Chapter 11-13. Hellion Vivian also felt a little sorry for the baby in her belly. However, as the old monk said, the newly born disciple of Buddha couldn't stand the invasion of any demonic aura at all. Moreover, such a child would only be carefree if she lived by the side of Buddha. The smell emitted from her body was the existence that attracted the dark things. If she wanted the baby to grow up safely, the only love Hellion Vivian could give her was to send her away no matter how reluctant she was. Hellion Vivian could feel that from the moment she came out of the hospital, His Highness had been suppressing the demonic nature in his body, fearing that she would feel uncomfortable. The two little ones were becoming more and more like older brothers, following each other up and down the stairs. Hellion Vivian thought about it and decided to tell the two little guys why she wanted to send her sister away. After Bailey Shangxia heard it, his cool little face became more silent. Hellion Wei Wei kissed him and explained patiently, "When she's 12 years old, we'll be able to bring our younger sister back. We can also visit her from time to time. We're separated now so that we can be together forever as a family." "Is it because of me that my sister can't stay?" Bailey Shangxia's voice was very low. Hellion Vivian felt distressed when she heard it. "Of course not. There are many reasons. A noisy city like this is not suitable for my sister. Demonic aura will damage Buddha's fate." Bailey Shangxia's face didn't show any joy or anger, but his eyes dimmed. "I can go back to the demon world." Hearing this, Qingchen immediately raised her little head and grabbed Bailey Shangxia's sleeve. It was obvious that she didn't want Bailey Shangxia to leave. For the first time, Hellion Vivian felt that something was not handled well. She looked at His Highness for help. Baligaju put down the business tablet in his hand and said in a lukewarm voice, "If demonic aura will damage Buddha's fate, the demonic aura in my body is the strongest. It's not your turn to leave." Bailey Shangxia heard it and felt that it was right. His father was much more dangerous than him. "But I won't leave." Baligaju continued, his deep eyes meeting his. "You should know that other than your mother I won't consider anything else. Your sister going to the temple has nothing to do with you. Even if it does, it's related to me. As a demon you have a lifespan of thousands of years. Don't learn from humans about puberty." Of course, Bailey Shangxia knew who was the most important person to his imperial father. When he was very young he had seen his father almost destroy the world for his mother. Could be said that demons were born this way. No matter how perfect their disguise was, they were still selfish in their bones. Since imperial father and imperial mother were together, they would have to send imperial sister away. But when he thought about it carefully, even if his father was not here, according to his mother, a child with Buddha fate was not suitable to stay in the mortal world. But no matter what, the knot in Bailey Shangxia's heart was finally untied. The child only had one thought. No matter how bad he was, it shouldn't be a problem for him to stay by his mother, brother and sister's side. If the situation that the exorcist said happened, he would immediately leave for the demon world. He would definitely not hurt his family. Days passed by. Time was like flowing water. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop it. The bigger Hellion Vivian's stomach, the more severe the reaction. After vomiting she always wanted to drink water. Her face was very pale. Baligaju knew that she didn't rest well, so he patiently patted her back and said these words to her in a low voice. Although it was a poisonous tongue that crushed her intelligence, it was very useful. This way Hellion Vivian could fall asleep. For a few days, Bailey Shangxia hid very far away from Hellion Vivian. He was afraid that the demonic energy on his body would make his mother feel uncomfortable. But when he turned around, Hellion Vivian kissed him and patted his head, asking him to take care of Qingchen. Bailey Shangxia knew at that time that the exorcists didn't make any sense. Because they weren't his mother and brother. Because some emotions could only be expressed to people who understood. After that, Bailey Shangxia bought a house in the capital. The golden agent did all the paperwork. After all, he was still a minor in the human world. This made him a little depressed. In the past he always wanted to run away from home with his mother and brother. Now that he had a sister, of course he couldn't be as careless as before. Even if he wanted to run away from home, he had to have a place to stay. After hearing the reason for buying a house, the golden agent was petrified. He was seriously considering running away from home. It wasn't careless at all. "But this idea has been in your mind for so long. Are you really not afraid that CEO Ju will beat you to death?" Bailey Shangxia never cared about these details. On the screen he was an innate vampire aristocrat. Off the screen he was the nation's older brother. He had everything planned out. Compared to these things, Qingshan was the most considerate. Knowing that his sister was going to be sent away, he bought a lot of small things for her. Most of them were for feeding her milk. Among them there was a milk bottle that Qingshan and Bailey Shangxie drew together. It was so that when his sister was born in the future she could take these things with her. There were also other small things that he wanted to give to his sister when he was going to see her. Even if he was reluctant to leave, he couldn't hide the layers of joy in his heart. Of course, the two children didn't expect that the so-called milk bottle was not necessary for a certain baby. On the day Hellion Vivian gave birth, the light of Buddha shone on the world. However, the people who were in a hurry didn't know. The baby was bright and white. Her skin was so good that the medical staff at the side couldn't help but praise. She seemed to be very quiet. She put her thumb in her mouth. Compared to a normal baby, she was chubby and cute. There were no wrinkles on her face. Just like that, she was wrapped in a thin blanket with a tiger head. That small blanket was also jumped on by Bailey Shangxie and Hellion Qingshan. This way, the three of them would use the same series of tiger head shoes, tiger head pajamas, and tiger head thin blanket. Amit Ba. The old monk appeared outside the ward on time. He smiled slowly. Baligaju seemed to be waiting for him. His slender figure leaned against the wall. His voice was very calm. When the child grows up and asks, just say that I want to send her away. Don't mention anything about the fate of Buddha to her. The old monk was stunned. Then he smiled and said, the emperor's love for the wisdom king is really deep. Whenever the phoenix of Buddhism gave birth to a child of Buddha, she would be sent away. Not to mention in this chaotic secular world. It was impossible that the emperor who was born from chaos didn't know this. He did this so that the child would not resent the wisdom king when she grew up. Thus he took all the responsibility on himself. Amit Ba. He didn't believe it before. Now he did. The emperor's love for the phoenix had always been real. Chapter 11:14. Everyone knew that Ju Wei Group had a new daughter. However, no one had ever seen her before. However, on the day she was born, Baligaju, who was dressed in a suit and had an elegant temperament, called the lawyer and shareholders and transferred all the shares to Hellion Vivian. 40% of the shares were owned by the little princess. Regarding this point, some people had even discussed it behind their backs. It was fine to say that when the little CEO grew up, he would definitely question the CEO Ju why he transferred most of the shares to his daughter. At that time, Bailey Shangxie was already famous. When he heard such rumors, his little face was cold. When my sister grows up, I can also share my money with her. Of course, girls have to be raised well. Yes. Both my younger brother and sister have to be raised well. My father has done so many terrible things, but this is the only thing he did right. The reporters were speechless. This was really an unexpected reaction. However, because of this very simple sentence, Bailey Shangxie had captured a lot of aunties and fans. After all, even during an interview when Qingshan ran in, he could spare time to feed the child water. He even pulled little Qingshan to prevent her brother from running outside, saying that the sun was too bright outside. Qingshan was even more likable. She blinked her big eyes at the reporters and asked if they were thirsty. After a while, she asked someone to deliver iced coffee. There were more than 100 cups, all for the staff. There were also a series of desserts such as New York cheese. Only then did people realize that the richest person in the entire Bailey family was the little young master. It was because he was too young that people always ignored him. Now that they thought about it, the little young master was very generous every time. The media looked at each other and immediately had the next day's headlines in their hearts. Without angering the little CEO, they dug up the little young master's background. Only then did they realize that he was a gangster. A gangster. And a little big boss with a legal firearms license. In other words, the other party was in the firearms business? God, this was completely not in line with the little young master's elegant and refined temperament, okay? However, there were always 4 people around him who collected protection fees. At first, the media thought that they were only slightly related to Hong Kong. Later on, they managed to dig up information about one of the big guys among the 4. He was a retired soldier from a special forces unit. Even in the international arena, he was very famous. His long-range attack ability was very strong. His codename was Old Jean. He wore sunglasses and had big golden teeth. Although he looked like a middle-aged man, he was a very handsome middle-aged man. It was said that both the Communist Party and the White Dao wanted to poach him. However, such a handsome uncle actually followed behind the little young master, holding a small school bag and a thermos bottle. Sometimes he would even take out a small fan to fan the little young master. He wouldn't know if he didn't dig, but once he did, he was shocked. The media no longer dared to touch on the background of the others. The only thing they could be sure of was that it was not a big deal for Ju Wei group to be given to the little princess. Because it was obvious that the little young master's background was very strong, so strong that it was blinding. When the employees of the Ju Wei group saw this headline, they finally believed what Qinshan had once said. Their CEO Ju was indeed the one who was being kept. The president's wife was so rich. What should she do? Those who wanted to climb up the ranks finally realized this stark difference. Those who wanted to find various opportunities to get close to Beligaju were completely listless. In the past, they did not know about Hellion Vivian's background. Now that they knew, they did not dare to act rashly. They were afraid that they would be called for protection fees. In this regard, little Qinshan was very satisfied. A family without outsiders was the most perfect. Hence, the diplomatic work of the family was all handed over to Qinshan. However, the other burly men were very unhappy. Why did they only dig up old Jin's information and not theirs? Monkey was very calm. From time to time he would put on a mask and apply facial oil. Old Jin asked him with a cigarette in his mouth, "What are you doing? What if a reporter takes pictures of me?" Monkey was extremely excited. "Look at how mysterious I usually am when I appear. After you, the person they will notice will definitely be me. Let me tell you, I've already prepared my opening speech. I want to tell them how awesome a hacker I am. I broke through the defense network with young Master Tang before I was 20 years old. At 21 years old." He gave a series of self-introductions. He had the aura of a modern poet. But the reality was, I heard that you are only 18 years old this year. You looked so cool the last time. What did you do before? Were you also a sniper like Uncle Jin?" Monkey, who was still posing at the side, gradually shrank into a ball. Why am I not the one being interviewed? Because it's all about looks now, old Jean said faintly. Monkey was very indignant when he heard this. He took out a mirror and looked at his face. Then he looked at Elle, who was not far away. In the end, he smashed the mirror. After comparing himself, he could only realize that he was uglier. The family lived such a lively life. Some of their usual interactions would make people sigh at how such a special and beautiful family could exist. Except that the little princess was not by their side. However, everyone seemed to know that they were doing this to protect. Time passed noisily. 4 years later. The sky had just brightened and a thin fog rose. A distant and dull bell sounded from the mountain top. Halfway up the mountain, there was a very simple and unadorned temple. There was only one treasure enshrined in it. That was the Buddha Mani Sakya. After the bell sounded in the temple, the scene suddenly came to life. Monks in monk robes hurried past the treasure. Soon the temple was filled with monks. All of them sat cross-legged on a futon. Their gazes were calm, neither high nor low. At the front was an old monk. He held a scripture in his hand and silently recited Dharma. The deacon read the names of the monks loudly. Xian Jing. Disciple is here. Xian Kong. Xian Kong. Senior brother, martial nephew Xian Kong is here. A loud and tender voice sounded. A loud bang was heard. The door of the temple was kicked open and a little monk walked in. He looked to be no more than 4 or 5 years old, and there were a few dots on his bald head. His white monk robes hung loosely on his body, and there was a big white steamed bun in his mouth. His lotus root-like arms were dragging a person. That person was Xian Kong, who was late. He who had been dragged all the way was about to cry. At this moment little Baldy puffed up his round cheeks. He was very petite and cute. His 2 bright eyes were very serious. Don't cry. Don't offend woolly Buddha. Chapter 11:15. Although little Baldy was young, she was very devout to Buddha and would not allow others to be late for chanting. Furthermore, little Baldy never liked to argue with others. She only liked to use her hands. Seeing that the situation was chaotic, the deacon's head throbbed as he shouted, "Xiana Ju. Senior brother, you're so loud you'll disturb Buddha Woolly." Little Baldy looked at him disapprovingly. "If you continue to shout, I'll beat you up." The deacon took a deep breath and told himself not to be angry. The other party was still a child and she was only 4 years old. It was wrong to be impulsive, not to mention that he was a monk. How many times have I told you not to drag people into the temple? Didn't I drag him in? Dragging is more serious than dragging. Senior brother, you're already so old, don't worry about so many details. Buddha said that people with a small heart will have wrinkles. I'm old. I'm only 28 years old, a substitute professor at Tsinghua University. How am I old? Do you know what people outside call me, a rich husband? Do you know what a rich husband is, you little brat? Ba, don't be so irritable in front of Buddha. Fine, I won't be irritable. I'll ask you why you hit me again. Can't you have a good talk with Shen Kong? Why waste so much time on something that can be solved with a single punch? Little Baldy tilted her head and took a bite of the steamed bun in her hand. She tightened her pinkish face to show that she was serious. The deacon could not hold it in anymore and turned to the monks who were hugging him. Let go of me. I must teach this brat a lesson today. Master, it's not that we want to stop you, but you really can't beat martial ant. The monks raised their heads, their eyes full of sincerity. Did you forget the last time she kicked you into the water? You caught a cold for 5 days before you recovered. At that time, Master told us that if you're impulsive again, we must think of a way to stop you. If we can't stop you, you'll punish us by chanting scriptures in unison. Have you forgotten these words? Master, you should calm down. The deacon was speechless. Everyone is still so energetic. Come, Aju, come to Master. The old monk was still smiling. Little Baldy walked over with his short and thick legs. He raised his hand and said, Ba. The old monk stroked the little one's head and said, Today I'm going to take you to meet someone. Joe, do you remember what I told you? When the time comes, I'll go down the mountain. Little Baldy pouted and said pitifully, But I don't want to go down the mountain. There's Master, steamed buns, and senior brothers to play with me. The ancient temple was isolated from the rest of the world. Very few people were born on the mountain. Little Baldy was the only one. It could be said that Little Baldy was brought up by these monks and had never come into contact with outsiders. The child was naturally reluctant to leave. However, there was one thing that was very difficult to understand, and that was that Little Baldy always thought that she was a boy. Furthermore, Little Baldy also felt that it was wrong for a boy to leave home. She was going to be a temple abbot in the future, so how could she casually leave the mountain? However, the truth was that Little Baldy was a pure girl. No one told her this, although she often received delicious food from her brothers and the little white cat that her parents gave her. However, Little Baldy's wish had always been to stay by Buddha's side and never leave. At the thought of leaving this place, Little Baldy couldn't help but reach out and grab her senior brother's trousers. The deacon also couldn't bear to part with his junior brother, but he knew that the master always had his reasons for doing things. In other words, in the entire temple, only the old monk knew that Little Baldy was a girl. The old monk didn't tell anyone about this. Everything was to protect Little Baldy. Now that Little Baldy's age had come, it wouldn't be suitable for her to stay in the temple anymore. After all, this wasn't Mountain Tenya. After all, there were differences between men and women. You forgot again. Buddha is everywhere. The old monk squatted down and looked at Little Baldy's face. As long as you have Buddha in your heart, you can go anywhere. Are you afraid of these experiences? Little Baldy raised her small fist and said firmly, Of course I'm not afraid. All experiences are the same as senior brothers, paper tigers. The deacon. Hey, if you want to talk, just talk. Why do you have to belittle me as well? The old monk gave him a comforting look, then said to Little Baldy, Come, Gio. Master will bring you down the mountain. That person is already waiting for you at the foot of the mountain. Little Baldy knew that she had no choice but to leave. She was carrying a monk's bag on her back. From time to time she would turn her head to look at those monks who couldn't bear to part with her. The deacon held Little Baldy's hand. After we go down the mountain, if anyone dares to bully you, you can call this number. Senior brother, don't worry. I'm not as weak as you. No one will bully me. This sentence made all the sadness in the temple disappear. The deacon was pulled back by a group of people behind him, so he didn't fight with Little Baldy. Little Baldy thought for a while, then walked back. She took 4 big steamed buns from the room. She held one in each hand and put the other 2 in the pockets of her monk robes. Master, I've taken the rations. Let's go. As she spoke, Little Baldy handed her soft little hand to the old monk. The old monk held her hand and walked step by step to the mountainside that was surrounded by clouds. At the foot of the mountain, A pure black military Hummer was parked on the narrow road. The license plate number was different from other cars. It was white and red. It was a car from the military. "We're here. Your fated person is there." The old monk lowered his eyes and looked at little Baldy. "Gio, remember Master's words. Even if you're not on the mountain, you have to do morning reading every day. There will be a day when your family will take you back." Little Baldy held the big steamed bun in her mouth and nodded obediently. Then she said very seriously, "But Master, I don't want to go back at all. I want to come back to the temple to be the abbot in the future. So Master, you must live well." The old monk was speechless. Just like that, after little Baldy finished instructing her master, she carried her small bag and held the big steamed bun in her mouth. She wobbled towards the black Hummer with a little white cat on her bald head. With a bang, the car door opened. A 9-year-old boy walked out. He was wearing overalls and a small shirt. There was even a small bow tie around his neck. His facial features were very outstanding, and his temperament was different from the monks on the mountain. Little Bald Head was immediately stunned. Chapter 11:16. Bai Huai, why are you still standing here? Quickly go and bring little junior brother over. Look at the big bag he's carrying. The child is about to be crushed. The person who spoke was already quite old. He was wearing a military uniform and the little bald head on his shoulder was a little dazzling. The old monk chanted Ba behind her. Why did General Bai come personally? A Jew likes to cause trouble every 2 to 3 days. I'll have to trouble you to take care of her in the future. Master, you're too serious. No matter how mischievous she is, she's still better than my grandson. He can't say a word for a long time. In my opinion, a Jew's personality is just right. She can let that brat know what a child is. The old man's voice was very deep. As one of the founding fathers, he was most worried about his grandson. He was usually really busy and only stayed at home 1 day a month. The rest of the time he had to run around outside. South Tibet had never been peaceful, so he had to guard it. However, these words could not be said to Bai Huai. Because every time he mentioned it, Bai Huai would calmly say to him, "I know that grandfather is afraid that I will think too much, but I won't. As a general, you should be stationed at the defense line." To be more precise, Bai Huai was a child who never made people worry about him. As a grandfather, he did not even know how to care about his grandson. He had also tried to communicate with the people at school, and the answers he received were all excellent. Even when he went to school, Bai Huai was so smart that no one worried about him. But the more it was like this, the more worried the old man was. This was also the reason why he agreed when he heard the abbot say that he wanted Bai Huai to adopt a child. If there was one more person by his grandson's side, it should be better. In the future, when he had a brother, Bai Huai should also be more popular. However, old Master Bai was wrong about one thing, and that was that a Jew was not a little junior brother. Of course, all of this was in the future. Now was the time. Little Baldy held a steamed bun in her mouth and stared at Bai Juan with her round eyes. She chanted, Ba. Only then did Bai Huai look over. He actually did not like children. Until now he still did not like children. However, since he was going to adopt, he naturally had to show his attitude. Get in the car. These 3 words were very light, but they were like those of a little adult. Little Baldy nodded and stretched out her soft little hand, which meant that she wanted Bai Huai to hold her. Bai Huai's eyes slid past little Baldy's soft hands and landed on those big round eyes. He paused for a moment before holding little Baldy's hand. Her hand was much smaller than his and it was very soft in his hand. Bai Huai thought that perhaps children were not all that troublesome. At the very least, his little junior brother looked very obedient. When the old man saw this scene, the smile on his face deepened. This is indeed different. Really. A Jew is a lucky star. The old monk smiled and said, the general is also a blessed person. As for Bai Huai, he is full of righteousness and even 100 ghosts will not invade. So the general can relax and let nature take its course. Hearing this, the old man was naturally happy. The Bai family had a special chauffeur driving in front, and the old man sat in the passenger seat. The 2 children sat in the back, one big and one small. Little Baldy still had the white cat on her head, and her big eyes seemed to be looking at everything strangely. After a while she was hungry. She took out a steamed bun from her pocket, frowned and thought for a while. In the end she decided to share half of it with Bai Huai. Little brother, I brought dry food. The steamed buns in the temple are very delicious. Ah, as she said this, Little Baldy took a bite of her half of the steamed bun and ate it very happily. Bai Hui looked at the little person's eyes, which were as round as a cat's, and heard her call him little brother. For a moment he could not refuse her enthusiasm. When the chauffeur saw this, he smiled and said, "Master, little master seems to be getting along very well with the new child." Yes. Old Master Bai was getting happier and happier. When little Baldy heard the words new child, she knew that they were talking about her. Her pink cheeks were still stuffed with steamed buns. She said very seriously, "Master told me that I have to be obedient when I go down the mountain. If I don't listen, Buddha won't want me anymore. Moreover, if I don't listen, I will meet women. I heard from my martial nephews that the women at the foot of the mountain are tigers. If I meet them, I will be unlucky." These words were said by a 4-year-old child. It was really funny. Old Master Bai laughed on the spot, and the chauffeur also couldn't help but laugh. Seeing them like this, little Baldy thought that they didn't believe him, so he continued with a serious face, "It's true. Monks don't lie. If it was a woman who came to adopt me, I wouldn't have appeared. Fortunately, the person who came was little brother. Amitabha Buddha, I'm good at fighting. Old grandpa and uncle don't laugh. Ha ha." Hearing this, Old Master Bai laughed even more recklessly. "Little Aju, you are really a happy person." Little Baldy didn't understand. What she said was based on her experience of living for 4 years. Why were the old grandpa and uncle smiling so happily? Even the corners of the little brother's mouth were slightly raised. Although it wasn't very obvious, she still saw it. As a monk after going down the mountain, she really couldn't communicate with people. Little Baldy heaved a sigh of relief. Bai Juan turned his head to look at the steamed bun residue at the corner of the little girl's mouth. He naturally took out a handkerchief and wiped it for her. "You're right. I don't like women either." Little Baldy felt that she had finally met a confidant. She smiled very sweetly at Bai Juan and then continued to lower her head to eat her big steamed bun. It was a child's nature to sleep after eating. In addition, there was really a master in the Hummer. Not long after, little Baldy fell asleep. She even dreamed that her master was teaching her boxing and that he was going to destroy her senior brother. To be honest, why was he so irritable? He would come back one day. It was really not good for her senior brother to think of her that way. In fact, the temple was setting off firecrackers all day long. When the child fell asleep, she also had a pink steamed bun face. She held her own package in her hands. The white cat on her head opened its eyes as if it was guarding little Baldy. It felt more spiritual than ordinary cats. Bai Juan looked at little Baldy's posture, and the rejection in his heart lessened a little. Perhaps the other party was even more uneasy than him. After all, they were in a new place and they would have to live with their new family in the future. Moreover, the little girl was only 4 years old. That little arm in his hand seemed to be able to break with a snap. Shouldn't he be nicer to the child? Bai Juan, who was only 9 years old, fell into serious contemplation. Chapter 11:17. The Bai family was located in the military compound. In the quiet Chang'an street, all vehicles had to be checked before entering and leaving. Ordinary people of this generation could not enter at all. There were specialized armed soldiers standing guard. The building was not very tall, but the greenery was very good. There was even a model of a fighter jet parked on the lawn of the courtyard. Little Baldy's eyes were big as he leaned against the car window. Together with the little white cat on his head, he was sizing up the new home that he was about to enter. His pink little face was filled with all kinds of expressions. This place was obviously different from the mountain. There were no apprentice nephews in monk robes, nor were there any apple trees to sit on. The main reason was that she couldn't even smell the smell of steamed buns. Could it be that the people at the foot of the mountain did not eat lunch? Little Baldy frowned in confusion. He touched his little belly with his little hand and glanced in Bai Juan's direction. Bai Juan was reading an English book. Little Baldy felt that it wasn't good to disturb her brother. After all, she had always settled things like eating by herself. Back in the temple, when there was not enough food to eat, she would snatch food from her martial nephews. It should be the same after descending the mountain. She had just seen someone leave with a lunchbox. She was going to have a talk with that person in a while. He clenched his fist. "Little Aju, come down. This is the place where you live with your little brother. Isn't it beautiful?" Old Master Bai had always been close to children, so he personally opened the car door. When little Baldy saw that the car door had opened, She stretched out her short legs and was about to jump down. Unfortunately, she was not tall enough, so she wanted to turn around and slide down. However, Bai Juan held her hand and said, "Get down slowly. This car has a high floor." Yes. For little Baldy, who was less than a meter tall, the military Hummer was indeed a little tall. She had stretched out her short legs for a long time, but they did not touch the ground. Little brothers were the best. Bai Juan did not feel anything wrong with leading little Baldy. The other party was too small. Even when he walked, he was a little shaky like a round roly-poly toy. Since he was adopted, of course he had to lead him. Old Master Bai stood at the side. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. It had only been a day, but his grandson had already gained some popularity. As expected, he should have brought Aju home a long time ago. "Chief, there seems to be a problem in the south. We need you to go there." The adjutant in military uniform walked over and whispered to Old Master Bai. Old Master Bai had just returned and was about to leave again. He subconsciously glanced at his grandson. Bai Juan's handsome and noble little face did not change in the slightest. It was as if he had already expected this result. "Grandpa, you can go if you have something to do. I'll stay here." Hearing his grandson's indifferent voice, Old Master Bai pulled little Baldy to the side and said, "Little Aju, can you accompany Brother Bai Juan on grandfather's behalf?" "Sure." Little Baldy's big eyes flickered. "Amit Ba. Buddha Wooly said that we must learn to save all living beings. Grandfather, go save others. I'll stay and save Brother Bai Juan. Grandfather, don't worry. I'll snatch food for Brother Bai Juan. I won't starve Brother Bai Juan." Old Master Bai, stealing food? You must have heard wrongly. The cute little Aju shouldn't be able to say such violent words. They didn't have much time. Once they received a mission, they had to set off. This was the duty of a soldier. In fact, Bai Juan was already used to it. When Old Master Bai left, he just stood there quietly and watched him leave. Thus, only the two children were left at home. Of course, there were also the driver, the auntie, and the soldier standing outside the door. There was no need to worry about the safety of the military compound at all. Little Baldy followed Bai Juan into the two-story building in front of her. Her big round eyes looked back and forth. She could not hold it in any longer. Why couldn't she smell the steamed buns? If there was no food at home, she could still run out and snatch it now. The uncle with the lunchbox should not have gone far. The child was hungry. She reached out and tugged at Bai Juan's sleeve. "Little brother, it's noon now. Shouldn't we eat? Master said that if we don't eat on time, we won't grow." Bai Juan had yet to speak. The driver beside him was shocked. "Didn't little Aju eat 2 big steamed buns just now? That's dry food." Little Baldy seriously played with her little fingers and explained, "It was a snack on the road. Now that we're home, of course we have to eat a proper lunch. Otherwise, Buddha will blame us." The driver's mouth twitched when he heard this. This was the first time he had seen a child treat a big steamed bun as a snack. Also, what the hell was being blamed by Buddha? "Uncle Lu, go and ask Auntie Wong to prepare some vegetarian food and bring it to the second floor." Bai Juan reached out and touched little Baldy's head. "Aju, come upstairs with me to wash your hands first." Little Baldy was also obedient. She knew that she had to wash her hands before eating. She just let Bai Juan hold her hand and lifted her short legs with great effort. She walked up the stairs step by step. She was especially happy that there was something to eat. Bai Juan lowered his head and looked at the little person he was leading. When he saw that her eyes were sparkling, his mood also became much better. After walking into the bathroom, little Baldy still had the little white cat on her head. The cat's tail swayed back and forth at the back of her head. Little Baldy had never seen such a beautiful sink. There was even a big lotus flower printed on it. The pure white tiles were cold and smooth to the touch. It was completely different from the small iron wash basin she used to wash her hands in the temple. At this point, it had to be mentioned that no matter how much incense money the temple received, the living conditions were always simple. It was completely the same facilities that were used after liberation. Even drinking water had to be done by pressing the well. Little Baldy's favorite thing to do every day was to press the well and carry water. Now that there was no need for the child to carry water, the child was really not used to it. She stared blankly at the beautiful sink and tiptoed to bury her little chubby face in it. She looked left and right, and accidentally little Baldy's little foot left the ground and fell into the sink. Oh. When Bai Juan heard the sound and came in, He saw little Baldy only left with her little claws lying on the sink and scratching back and forth. She looked like a little turtle that had just come out of its shell. He shouldn't have let his child come in to wash her hands. Bai Juan immediately walked forward and saved little Baldy from the sink. Little Baldy's nose was red. Her eyes were wide open as she said, "As expected, Master was right. If you don't respect Buddha, you will be punished. In the future, I will never speak ill of others behind their backs again." "Who did you speak ill of?" Bai Juan thought that the child would cry. He reached out and rubbed little Baldy's nose. He began to reflect on whether he was incompetent as a brother. Even if he didn't like children very much, the situation was different now. Little Aju was sent over to be adopted by him, so she was his now. He should be more careful. Bai Juan didn't dare to imagine how much water little Light would have choked on if he hadn't discovered it in time just now. Chapter 11:18. Fortunately, he didn't go far. Bai Juan looked at the pink little face in front of him and reflected deeply on himself. Little Baldy didn't know that his fall had destroyed Bai Juan's grudge. He still said seriously, "I just secretly scolded senior brother for being stupid in my heart. I won't scold him again in the future. If I really miss him, I'll go back to the mountain and beat him up." Bai Juan was speechless. "I think he would prefer it if you secretly scolded him in your heart." As a child, this was the first time he knew what it meant to not know whether to laugh or cry. Little Baldy's hands had not been washed yet. Bai Juan took a look. The child's height was indeed too small. He could barely reach the sink. Without thinking, he took little Baldy's little hand over. Bai Juan was originally a young master of a military family. It was also his first time serving someone. First, he applied a fragrant hand soap on a child's hand. Then he turned on the tap and lowered his eyes to wash Aju's hand. Little Baldy looked at his hands that were full of bubbles and his eyes widened. This cute expression was very useful to Bai Juan. He felt that the child he adopted was completely different from other people's. It was not that he had never come into contact with children. Whether they were younger than him or about his age, they were always noisy. However, the child in his family was very cute. "I'm done washing," little Baldy said as his little stomach started to growl. Only then did Bai Juan really believe that the child was really hungry and not just saying it casually. Fortunately, Auntie Wang cooked quickly. When she heard that the young master wanted to eat vegetarian food, she brought back a little monk. She chopped long beans and shallots and placed them in a wooden basin. Then she fried 6 eggs and placed them in it. She added a little peanut sesame oil and 13 spices and mixed them together to form white vegetable buns. The buns were steamed in the pot and the other side was used to make rice porridge. There were dates in the rice porridge. After it was cooked, Auntie Wang started the fire again and made braised eggplant, governor's tofu, cold cucumber and some bean paste buns. These were basically the children's favorite foods. As soon as little Baldy followed Bai Juan down, he smelled the thick fragrance of the buns and ran over following the fragrance. He saw a woman standing in the kitchen. Little Baldy's happy little face immediately changed. She quietly moved towards Bai Juan. "Little brother, why is there a woman in the house? Isn't it very scary?" Bai Juan recalled what the child had said about the woman at the foot of the mountain being a tiger. He could not help but laugh. "Auntie Wang is not scary. She is still cooking for you." "Cooking?" Little Baldy clung to Bai Juan's back and poked her little bald head out. She sized up Auntie Wang, who was smiling at her. "Just like senior brother Xian Hong in the temple, do you care about our meals?" Bai Juan nodded. Little Baldy immediately straightened his back. "That's not scary. Those who can cook are not scary." Auntie Wang had long been amused by the child's argument. In addition, little Aju was already very likable. Her small face was round and her skin was fair and tender. Coupled with her big bright eyes, anyone who saw her would like her. The vegetable buns at the side were not cooked yet, but the small bean bun was already ready. It was originally bought from the supermarket and could be eaten after heating it up. Now it was just ready to be eaten. When Auntie Wang saw the child looking at her eagerly, she knew that the child was hungry. She took a small bean bun from the pot and handed it to Xianjiao. Little Baldy was stunned by this sudden surprise. Then he stretched out his 2 chubby little hands and held the small bean bun very preciously. He bowed and said, "Amit Ba. Thank you, benefactress." Benefactress? Auntie Wang could not help but want to laugh when she heard this title. The bean bun was still very hot. Little Baldy held it back and forth with his two little hands. Just as he opened his mouth to take a bite, he was stopped by Baizhuan. Little Baldy raised his head and his cat tail was still wagging. Little brother, do you want to eat it too? I'm not eating. Baizhuan pulled the child to a chair at the dining table and sat down. Then he took his small bean bun and placed it on the plate. He first poked a hole with wooden chopsticks and blew on it. When he felt that it was not hot anymore, he fed it to Xianjiao. Little Baldy howled and took a big bite. Sweet. How could the bean paste not be sweet? Baizhuan chuckled and reached out to wipe Little Baldy's mouth. He continued to feed him with chopsticks. Baizhuan was not old to begin with. No matter how smart he was still a 9-year-old child. Now that he was feeding Little Baldy, who was 2 sizes smaller than him, the scene always looked beautiful. On the other hand, Auntie Wang was a little stunned as she watched from the side. Although their young master did not have a delicate temper, he had never been so close to anyone before. The children in the courtyard basically listened to their young master and were not naughty in front of him at all. This was not because of the Bai family's military rank, but because the young master gave people the temperament of a superior person just by standing there. Those children were all well behaved when they saw the young master, and the young master never used other people's things. Now he was actually feeding the child bean bun. In fact, this was not a big deal. If Auntie Wang knew that her young master not only knew how to feed the child, but also how to wash the child's hands, she would definitely be extremely shocked. 1 bean bun was obviously not enough for Little Baldy. After it was gone, Little Aju turned her head to look at Auntie Wang again. Auntie Wang's heart softened when she saw that pair of big watery eyes. She opened the lid of the pot and wanted to get another one for the child. You're not allowed to eat anymore. Baizhuan's voice was very indifferent. What did Buddha say? You have to eat proper lunch. Now that you're eating so many bean buns, how are you going to eat vegetables and porridge later? Little Baldy frowned. I can eat them all. When the vegetable buns are cooked later, you can eat them with the vegetables. Baizhuan rolled up the monk robe for her. Only then will you grow taller. In the temple there were usually more staple foods and very few vegetables. However, Little Baldy always had more than others. Wali Buddha also said that you should eat more vegetables. Although Little Baldy felt that it was a pity, she still obediently put down her chopsticks and sat on the chair, waiting for the meal to start. Auntie Wang's movements were even faster this time. She stirred the pot, and not long after, the steamed buns and stir-fried vegetables were served on the dining table. There were also a few small plates for vinegar and chili oil. Little Baldy liked to eat spicy food the most, so there was no need for Baizhuan to feed her. She held a meat bun dipped in vinegar and chili oil in one hand, and a small spoon in the other to drink the porridge. The child ate very well, and even Baizhuan felt that he had an appetite. However, just as he lowered his head, he saw that Little Baldy finished the steamed buns in her hand. Then there was the second, the third, the sixth. Baizhuan turned his head and saw that the silly child's mouth was full of food. Her cheeks were bulging and she moved her mouth like a little squirrel. She did not forget to lower her head to drink a mouthful of porridge, and there was still a steamed bun skin stuck to the corner of her mouth. Chapter 11:19. The white cat had already jumped to the side when Little Baldy was eating. Now, only Little Baldy was left to meet Baizhuan's probing gaze with wide eyes. The child scratched his head in embarrassment and explained shyly, Wali Buddha said that I need to eat more because I'm growing. But I just counted. There are 25 buns in the pot. I'll eat 8 and give the rest to my brother Auntie Wang and Uncle Lu. If that doesn't work, I'll go and snatch other people's food. Isn't there someone in the courtyard with a lunchbox? There must be food inside. Auntie Wang had originally planned to fry the 25 big buns in water at night, but she didn't expect that the child could eat so much. Baizhuan, on the other hand, was very good at grasping the main point. In the future, you're not allowed to snatch other people's food. If you're hungry, just tell me. These buns are all for you. You can eat as much as you want, but you can't make yourself full, understand? As Baizhuan spoke, he took out a piece of paper from the paper box and wiped the child's mouth. Little Baldy's eyes widened. But if I finish it all, then little brother won't have anything to eat. Auntie Wang will continue. As soon as Baizhuan said this, Auntie Wang smiled and said, That's right. Young master, there are plenty of buns at home. Eat as much as you want. Ba, my Buddhist name is Xianjiao. Little Baldy stretched out his hand and swallowed the food in his mouth. Then he looked at Auntie Wong seriously and said, "Benefactress, you can call me Nine." Auntie Wong saw how adorable the little monk was. She reckoned that he had just returned to the secular world not too long ago and was still calling her poor monk. Bai Jun moved little Baldy's chair closer to him so that it was easier to take care of the child. When little Baldy saw that there were still steamed buns, she said to Bai Jun very seriously, "Then I will suppress my appetite." "So you ate 6 steamed buns in one go while suppressing your appetite? Not to mention the little bean bun just now." Bai Jun pressed his forehead. Why did he feel that he had adopted a little foodie? This meal was particularly delicious. The steamed buns were dipped in chili oil, and from time to time, a refreshing cucumber would be slapped with a pair of chopsticks. This was the typical way of eating in the north. This was what people in the capital liked. In the past, sauced beef would definitely appear on the table. Sprinkled with a special sauce, it tasted especially good in summer. However, with little Baldy around today, Bai Jun did not eat any meat dishes. He just ate the porridge and the steamed buns. His appetite was not worse than usual. On the contrary, because he was accompanied by the child, he even ate some more dishes. Little Baldy's favorite dish was the governor's tofu. This was a local dish and the way it was cooked was different. It was like adding egg juice to the tender tofu. It melted in the mouth and was extremely delicious. After eating for about half an hour, little Baldy propped up his round belly and said to Auntie Wong, "Amit ba. Thank you, benefactress." Bai Jun saw the child like that and was afraid that she would not be able to digest it well, so he pulled her over and rubbed her small stomach twice. Little Baldy did not understand why Bai Jun would do such a thing. After being stunned for a moment, she also imitated Bai Jun's actions and wanted to rub Bai Jun's back. "Stop fooling around." Bai Jun blocked the child's hand. "Are you okay?" Little Baldy thought for a moment and decided to tell the truth. "Actually, I can still eat 5 more vegetable buns, but Auntie Wong is too tired from cooking, so I'll save some for tonight." Bai Jun was speechless. It seemed that he should find a helper for Auntie Wong. Little Baldy blinked her big eyes twice and felt that something was not right. Why did no one ring the bell even after she had finished eating? Then when was she going to start chanting the scriptures? Thinking of this, little Baldy was very conflicted. One had to know that when she was in the temple she had already started chanting the scriptures at this time. Of course, in fact, she was not very interested in chanting the scriptures. The main point was that after chanting the scriptures, she would play wrestling games with the martial nephews of the warrior monk Hall. If she did not chant the scriptures, how could she wrestle? Little Baldy was anxious and reached out to grab Bai Jun's sleeve. Bai Jun drank his tea and had a copy of The Little Prince in his hand. Seeing that the child's forehead was sweating, he asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" "If I don't chant the scriptures, Buddha will blame me." Little Baldy explained incoherently, "But we don't ring the bell here." Others might not understand this sentence, but Bai Jun, who had also lived in the temple, understood the work and rest time there. He raised his eyes and looked at the clock in the hall. "You can read the scriptures from now on. I will tell you when it ends." As Bai Jun said this, he bent down, picked up the little girl and placed her on the sofa. Little Baldy trusted her new little brother very much. She crossed her legs and began to chant the scriptures devoutly. The child's voice was not loud and it still carried a soft and childish tone. To Bai Jun, not only did this not feel noisy, but it also had a different kind of tranquility. Even the sun outside did not seem so big. However, the good times did not last long. Little Baldy had only been chanting the scriptures for less than half an hour when a group of children came in from outside. These children were all from the military compound. It could be said that each of their families was very powerful and often came to the Bai family. The soldiers outside definitely would not stop them. The child in the lead was a little tyrant. Usually he only obeyed Bai Jun. As soon as he entered the door, he saw a little monk meditating there. He immediately felt a little confused. What's going on? Where did this monk come from? There's not a single strand of hair on his head. Has he been shaved? Why did this little monk appear in Brother Bai's house? Hearing the discussions around him, Master Li took out the wooden stick that they had used to play ball just now. He lowered his voice and warned, "All of you be quiet. Bai Jun is not here. He must be taking an afternoon nap. If you wake up Brother Bai, I won't accept you as my underlings." Then how do we deal with this little monk? There was a girl there. She was wearing a very virtuous princess dress, but she looked at Aju with displeasure. If she was not mistaken, the little monk's leg was covered with Baijuan's small blanket. Usually she could not even touch Baijuan's things. How could this little monk be covered with a small blanket? The children were jealous for no reason. Master Li also recognized the blanket. Thinking about it carefully, he was the one who grew up wearing the same pants as Baijuan. Where did this little monk come from? He had never even heard of him. Little gangster Li had been mischievous since he was a child. When he saw the little monk sitting there motionless, he winked at the two children standing on his left and right. He wanted to show the little monk who was in charge of him and let him know who was in charge here. Let me tell you, brother, this kid. Before he could finish his words, he saw that Baijuan had already walked past him and held little Baldy's hand. He looked left and right. After confirming that she was fine, he raised his head and looked at the group of children in front of him with heavy eyes. Baijuan, who had just gotten up from bed, was the one who was not to be trifled with. None of the children in the military compound did not know about this matter. Usually Baijuan looked like a little prince. He knew more things and knew more things than anyone else. Even the seniors were not as calm as him. But at this moment, the gloomy aura emitted from his body was so obvious. This had something to do with him being woken up and seeing his adopted child being bullied as soon as he went downstairs. Who allowed you to make a move? Baijuan turned his head and looked at Li Hailu. Li Hailu, you even dare to use a stick in my house, don't you? Li Hailu wanted to explain. Brother, no. I see that you're quite arrogant with a stranger here. Baijuan touched the back of little Baldy's head again. Seeing that the child was really fine, his anger subsided, and the expression on his face also calmed down a lot. He's not a stranger. He's my youngest junior brother. His name is Xianjiao. He's the little brat you didn't want to adopt? Li Hailu shouted. Little Baldy was still a little confused. Weren't these people found by her little brother to wrestle with her? Amitba. This penniless monk's Buddhist name is Xianjiao. As little Baldy spoke, she bowed very politely and then asked, Little brother, are you not willing to adopt me? Li Hailu laughed. Dang, shut up. Baijuan really wanted to drag his brother over and beat him up. Li Hailu saw that Baijuan's expression was not very good. He touched his prickly hair and swallowed the words that he wanted to say. Baijuan picked up little Baldy and put her in his arms. They sat on the sofa together and said to the child, Little brother is not unwilling to adopt you. There was a misunderstanding before. Li Hailu was speechless. He clearly didn't want to adopt her. Baijuan even said that he hated naughty children the most, especially those 3 or 4 years old. He had to let them know the rules when they came. Why was the current script completely different from what he had planned before? Moreover, this was the first time he had seen Baijuan talk to someone so patiently. I believe in little brother. Little Baldy reached out and rubbed Baijuan's face. Buddha Wooly said that little brother and I are fated. Buddha Wooly will not lie. Only by staying by little brother's side can Aju be safe. Even if little brother doesn't like Aju, it's normal. After all, little brother has never seen Aju before. After we get to know each other, little brother will like Aju more and more. Li Hailu was speechless. Hey little monk, where did your mysterious confidence come from? However, he did not expect that Baijuan would actually smile faintly at little Baldy in his arms and casually reply, yes. Li Hailu's eyes widened. Fuck, was this still the Baijuan he knew? Chapter 11:21. Baijuan seemed to know what Li Hailu was thinking. He raised his head and glanced at him. Sit down. I'll get Auntie Wong to cut some iced watermelons for you. Every time Baijuan had this expression, Li Hailu would definitely be obedient. Because he knew that Baijuan was different from him. What was that word called? The teacher had just taught them. What was it like to be happy or angry? In any case, it was very complicated. This was how children fought. When they heard that there was watermelon to eat, they all sat on the sofa. Although the children in the military compound had good living conditions, they were raised to be a little tiger-like. They were not delicate. Otherwise, they would definitely not give up after being beaten up like this. Some of them were in pain when they opened their mouths and faces. Of course, these people had their own ideas in their hearts. They were not afraid of their own brothers. Moreover, their fathers were all in contact with each other. They had cultivated family alliances since they were young. This was a tradition of the military compound. As they chewed on the watermelon, the group of tiger-like children did not forget to steal glances at the little monk sitting in Baijuan's arms. After all, this child was too powerful. They had not met anyone who could overturn all of them. Of course, Baijuan was an exception. Baijuan was their Prince Charming. However, why was Baijuan so good to the child? One had to know that even their courtyard belle had never been hugged by Baijuan. The courtyard belle was Lin Ziwen, who was sitting on the sofa in a princess dress and eating watermelon in small bites. She was also looking at Aju, and the displeasure in her eyes was very obvious. Aju did not hold the watermelon and eat it. Baijuan specially asked Auntie Wang to cut the watermelon into small pieces for the child. She took a small fork and put it into her mouth. Little Baldy wanted to hold the bowl and eat by herself, but Baijuan felt that if he had not gone up to sleep just now, his child would not have been able to stand being bullied. Therefore, he held little Baldy in his arms and fed her mouthful by mouthful. Baijuan usually did not care who bullied the child in the end. As long as the other party made a move on his child, it would be his child who was bullied. Young Master Bai had such a mighty and domineering value. It was difficult for him to change since he was young. Little Baldy was also obedient. He was already smaller than the average person. He sat in Baijuan's arms and ate with a cat on his head. Master Li finished his piece of watermelon and wiped his mouth. Baijuan, you can't raise a child like this. My father said that when you raise a child you have to give him a red date. Look at him teasing me all day. I still have the mark of his kick this morning on my butt. Scram. Baijuan slowly wiped little Baldy's mouth. He did not want to accept other people's views on education at all. Of course, he had to pamper his adopted child. The other older children had never seen such a small monk before. In addition, little Baldy's head was very delicate. Every part of his body was round and smooth. Just looking at him made people want to pinch him. Thinking of this, Li Hailu stretched out his hand. Baijuan immediately glared at him. You don't want your claws anymore? Baijuan, no, I just want to help you guide him. Li Hailu said seriously, my mother has said since I was young that this brat is very difficult to take care of. It's hard for you to take care of a child by yourself, right? I'll help you share the burden. Baijuan slowly smiled. You don't have to share the burden. If you come over again, I won't let you copy my homework. Don't do that. Li Hailu still wanted to say something. Little Baldy chanted, Amit Ba. Woolly Buddha said that only bad children will be beaten by their parents. Judging from the character of your sneak attack just now, you really do need to be taught a good lesson with a stick. Li Hailu was speechless. Woolly Buddha. Where did this little unearthed cultural relic come from? That's the thought of an old person. Do you understand feudalism? Do you understand superstition? Now the most important thing is personality. Li Hailu said proudly, Xianjiao, right? From now on follow your brothers. You're too rustic. You'll be eliminated by society. Little Baldy did not understand. He turned his head and asked Baijuan, Little brother, will a Jew be eliminated by society? No. Baijuan patted the child's head. A Jew will be raised by me in the future. Li Hailu was instantly dumbfounded when he heard this. If he could be raised by Baijuan in the future, it would indeed be difficult for him to be eliminated by society. However, little Baldy frowned and shook his bald head. No, in the future little brother will be raised by me. My mother said that if you want to be a temple abbot, you have to be financially independent. You have a mother? Li Hailu was shocked. He, who was dumbfounded the whole time, only felt that the little monk in front of him was an unearthed cultural relic. It was really strange that he actually had a normal family relationship. Little Baldy raised his eyebrows seriously. You don't? Could it be that you jumped out from a crack in the rock? Isn't that monkey's son? What the hell, he was actually speechless. At this time Lin Ziwen questioned, if you have a mother, why don't you live with her? Why do you want to come to the Bai family? And you're not related to the Bai family by blood, right? Why are you calling Baijuan brother? Do you want to stay in the Bai family in the future? Do you think a poor little monk like you is worthy? When little Baldy heard this, his big eyes dimmed. He didn't want to stay in the Bai family and not leave. Master said that I want to be with little brother. I can only look for mother and the others when I'm 12 years old. I won't stay in the Bai family for free. Little Baldy said seriously, I will protect little brother. Don't joke around. Brother Baizhuan needs a little pee, clang. Before Lin Ziwen could finish her words, the fruit plate on the table was kicked over by someone. The person who kicked the table was none other than Baizhuan. Li Hailu had long said that Baizhuan was more ruthless than anyone else when he fought. If anyone wants to say another word, get out. Baizhuan's good-looking little face turned cold. What do you mean? You came to my house to bully my younger brother? He's only 4 years old and you guys want to beat him up. Why? I've already exposed this matter and you guys still won't let it go, right? Lin Ziwen, he's my adopted junior brother. If he doesn't live with me, who will he live with? Even if he stays in our Bai family for the rest of his life, what does it have to do with you? After Baizhuan finished speaking, he carried little Baldy up and went up to the second floor with great effort. The group of children downstairs were a little stunned. Thinking about it carefully, what they had done this time was indeed wrong. After hearing Baizhuan's words, their faces felt even hotter. Everyone looked in Lin Ziwen's direction. Lin Ziwen burst into tears immediately. She ran out of the villa with a pretty face. In the bedroom on the second floor, Baizhuan was still angry. He rarely got angry because many things were under his control. But the child in his arms was like him in the past. After losing his parents, he had lived with his grandmother for a period of time, and people would say the same thing about him. If it wasn't for the reason at home, which child wouldn't be willing to live with their parents? He had only brought the child home for a day. First, he accidentally let the child get hurt at noon, and now he had to suffer such grievances. Chapter 11:22. Baizhuan clenched his fingers tightly. After waking up, the symptoms of hypoglycemia made him reach out and press his forehead. Little Baldy still had a piece of watermelon in his mouth. He stretched out his small hand and patted Baizhuan's head. Little brother, Woolly Buddha said that if you are always angry you will grow old. You look quite old to begin with, so don't be angry. Baizhuan was speechless. His child's ability to comfort people could really infuriate the living to death. He finally understood why the senior brothers on the mountain always talked about little Baldy in a loving and hateful tone. I'm not angry anymore. Don't take those people's words to heart. Baizhuan's voice faded. They are not me and they can't be the head of the Bai family. From the moment you entered the Bai family, you are a child of the Bai family, my younger brother. Little Baldy nodded. Seeing that Baizhuan seemed to have a headache, he stretched out his soft and tender little hand and massaged Baizhuan's temples. Woolly Buddha said that there will always be all kinds of people in the world. There is no need to punish yourself with other people's thoughts. Lin Ziwen, aren't you angry that she said you? Baizhuan was still worried that the child would think too much. I'm not angry. Little Baldy shook his head first, then leaned close to Baizhuan's ear and said seriously, I just think that stupid senior brother is right. The women at the foot of the mountain are indeed tigers. I can't ignore the other types just because Auntie Wang is good. I will pay attention in the future. How will you pay attention? Baizhuan felt that the little hand pressing on his head was very comfortable. He just hugged the little person and lay on the bed. He was not worried about the situation downstairs. With Li Hailu watching, there would not be any trouble. Little Baldy's big eyes were round. How else can I pay attention? Of course, I will beat her up when she talks about me. With such a confident tone, even the best student, young Master Bai, could not help but twitch his mouth twice. How should he educate his child? In the future he should talk more and not do more. This seemed to be a relatively long process. Baizhuan didn't know if he sighed or not, but since that day for the first time, young Master Bai had the thought of wanting to protect someone. Little Baldy sat on the bed and was still rubbing Baizhuan's head. Then she seemed to have thought of something and her little face was very serious. Little brother, I'm not poor. I can support you so you don't have to worry. Yes. Baizhuan answered, but in fact he did not take the little fellow's words to heart. He just felt that with such a milky child in his arms he even felt comfortable with his eyes closed. When little Baldy heard that Baizhuan had agreed, she immediately became happy and rubbed Baizhuan's head even harder. Li Hailu sneaked up and saw the scene. He knew that Baizhuan had never been able to sleep well. It was probably related to the death of his uncle and auntie. Baizhuan was always more right than them. He could not guess what his brother was thinking. It was just that the Bai clan was usually empty and devoid of people. Now that the little monk was here, it suddenly became a lot livelier. Little Baldy was the first to see little Gangster Li. She narrowed her eyes and looked very dangerous. It was as if the other party had entered a territory that he should not have entered. Those who did not know would think that he had provoked some little beast. Li Hailu hurriedly stretched out his hand to surrender. I'm here to apologize to your senior brother. I'm not a bad person. Little monk, it's not right for you to look at me like that. My Dharma name is Xianjiao. The people at the foot of the mountain are always so difficult to communicate with. Little Baldy was very puzzled as to why he refused to call her by her name properly. Bai Juan listened to the little fellow's emphasis and smiled lightly as he patted the child's head. His memory is not good. He always gets a bad score during exams. Bai Juan, you can't smear me in front of your younger brother like this. How can you set up the correct values for him like this? Li Hailu shouted. Bai Juan said very slowly, you're a bad example. Li Hailu was silent for a moment. He looked at Bai Juan and coughed lightly. You're not angry anymore, right? Bai Juan raised his eyebrows. What do you think? Don't be angry. I have a lot of games to play here. Let's fight online later. Li Hailu used his fist to touch Bai Juan's shoulder. Bai Juan sat up with little Baldy in his arms and said indifferently, not interested. Then tell me, what should we do? Li Hailu's face was flushed red. It's our brothers who didn't do well in this matter. Actually, I agree with your way of doing things. As the saying goes, women are like clothes, brothers are like hands and feet. You were right to be angry at Lin Ziwen. We support you. You should do this for your younger brother. But you can't abandon the group of brothers downstairs, right? Bai Juan smiled. What are you thinking about? I mean, don't play online games and play something else. Eju has just arrived. When it's not hot outside, let's take her for a stroll in the courtyard. Ah, I see. Li Hailu's eyes lit up. He said to little Baldy, this entire courtyard belongs to us brothers. We'll take you to catch a bird in a while. Little Baldy's face was full of question marks. Silly bird? She didn't understand. It turned out that people who got a bad score couldn't speak clearly. Bai Juan picked up the little fellow again. She's small, so she can't walk very far. Don't worry, leave it to me. After saying that, Li Hailu ran downstairs to prepare. Auntie Wang looked at the sun outside. First, she brought the handmade mung bean soup and mint tea that were frozen in the fridge for the children to drink to relieve the heat. Then she made some fruit ice cream. The Bai family did not have cola soda. In fact, the more a child came from a military family, the more they controlled their food. The Bai family was even more strict. 7 or 8 older children sat on the sofa discussing how to catch more birds. It was as if they were going to win a battle. When it was past 4 in the afternoon, the sun outside still hadn't set much. Auntie Wang was worried that little Baldy would get sunburned again, so she found a hat that Bai Juan wore when he was young. It was a nondescript combination with the kasaya and it looked cute. Bai Juan saw that the child was looking up at him with her round little face. Only then did he realize that as the head of the family he should buy some new clothes for the child. He couldn't let the child come to the city and still wear a monk's robe. Li Hailu was a carefree person. How could he notice the little monk's attire? He raised his hand excitedly. Let's go. With such an order, the group of children ran out in a flurry. Little Baldy was also affected by this enthusiasm. She ran to the front of the group of people. When she turned around again, behind them, there was no one behind them. Li Hailu and the others were also dumbfounded. Was the little monk in front of them a human? Why did they feel that it was like a set of flaming wheels with acceleration and deceleration? Chapter 11:23. In fact, the reason why little Baldy could run so fast was because he had to carry water every morning in the temple. The disciples felt that his combat strength was too strong, so they tied a circle of gravity iron around the child's legs. Now that little Baldy had gone down the mountain, his body was no longer bound, so of course his speed was extraordinary. Master Li panted behind him and cried, Bai Juan, you said not to go too far. Look at your child. He looks like the kind of person who can't go too far. Children are very active. Bai Juan sent Master Li away with these words. At the same time, he had a general understanding of his junior brother. Originally, when he saw that the child was young, the master would not give the things in the temple to the child. Now, it seemed that he had underestimated the master's method of calling people. In fact, Bai Juan did not underestimate the old monk. It was just that he could not prevent little Baldy from becoming a self-taught talent. When children played, it was always noisy. A passing chief saw this and nodded with a smile. Seeing this group of children reminds us of when we were young, right? That brat of mine doesn't do homework again. This was Master Li's father. The person beside him smiled and said, "Don't worry, there's Bai Juan to take care of him. They're both children, why is the difference so big?" Master Li's father wanted to cry when he talked about this. Could it be a genetic mutation? On the other side, Master Li was still shouting, "Damn it, Wang de Zhuang. Don't pull Master Li's pants. Left, crawl to the left. Li Hailu. Get your ass back here." Just like that, little Baldy's first day in the military compound ended with Master Li being chased around the compound by his father. Little Baldy played very happily. He had to exercise every day. If he did not play like this, the energy in his body would not be used up. When Bai Juan brought the child home, it was almost 6 o'clock. It was time to eat again. This time, without little Baldy saying anything, Auntie Wang made a table full of vegetarian dishes. There were tomato beans, cold lotus root, stir-fried wood ears, and baby cabbage. There was everything. The pot was stewed with big rice. Usually, Auntie Wang used a small pot to stew for the young master. After seeing little Baldy's appetite, she decisively changed to a big pot. Little Baldy held the steaming white rice and ate it. From time to time he would raise his little head and smile at Bai Juan. For little Baldy, the happiest thing in the world was being able to eat white rice. Only then did Bai Juan realize that the child's favorite was not big steamed buns but rice. After discovering this, Master Bai immediately called the canteen in the courtyard and asked them to move all the rice that had been transported from the northeast. The prerequisite for raising a child was to feed her well. Little Baldy was indeed very full. With a round belly, he carried a small stool and ran around. She wanted to wash the dishes herself, but Auntie Wang wouldn't let the child touch them no matter what. Since little Baldy had nothing else to do, he started to move the stool again. Young Master Bai reached out and grabbed the child, taking her out for a walk. Little Baldy walked slowly this time. He was very obedient and let the little brother hold his hand. The white cat walked in front of him. When an old chief saw them, he asked, "Hey, who is little Bai holding hands with? Why are you dressed like this?" "My younger brother just came down from the mountain." Everyone that Bai Juan met said that the child was his. When they came out for a walk at this time, they would only meet those old men in the courtyard. Bai Juan's action was undoubtedly to reveal little Baldy's identity. Young Master Bai had thought of many things since he was young. Since she was his child, she would definitely be involved in both the military and the political in the future. He had to nurture the child's ruthlessness. At the very least, no one would dare to provoke little Aju. As for boys, they had to be raised with more integrity. This was what his grandfather often said when he raised him. Young Master Bai thought that this method should be suitable for little Aju. Little Baldy was soft and cute to begin with. When a few old chiefs saw her, they all wanted to hug her. Amit Ba. Little Baldy bowed and shook her head. Aju is too heavy. The grandpas can't carry her. The adjutants beside her would not let the old chiefs carry her either. Like coaxing a child, they coaxed the old men. They could not hug her, but they had to pinch her. Who knew that the Bai family's boy was so protective? When he saw them make a move, he said, "Grandpas, it's getting late. Aju still has to go back and wash her hands and sleep. I'll bring her out tomorrow morning to accompany the grandpas in military boxing." Go. What a little fox. The old chiefs liked the Bai family's boy. Among them there were also grandsons. However, when they thought of their grandsons, they felt a burning sensation. Children were more sensible when they were younger. When they grew up, they were getting further and further away from them. After little Baldy returned to the villa, she obediently let her little brother wash her hands. Then she arched her small body and took out her small package. Inside were scriptures and some monk robes as well as other miscellaneous items, all of which were related to Buddha. Little Baldy first opened the scriptures and seriously laid on the wooden table to copy the scriptures. This was what she had to do every day before she went to bed. If she did not do it, Buddha would blame her. After copying the scriptures, little Baldy began to write a diary. After the diary was written, it had to be mailed to a place regularly. Although her master did not say anything, little Baldy knew in her heart that it must be her mother and brother who were worried about her, so they asked her to write about her daily life. Therefore, from that day onwards, little Baldy wrote the diary very seriously. "Today little brother and I came to the city. The house in the city was so big and there was also a gray plane. Little brother was very good to me. He gave me white rice to eat and even asked people to come and wrestle with me. Although those people's standards were not very good, I still lived very happily. The people at the foot of the mountain are more difficult to communicate with. Buddha Wooly said that time is omnipotent. I will slowly let everyone. Little Baldy wrote until here and scratched her big head. Bai Juan, who had just taken a shower and was wiping her hair, was still watching from behind. When he saw the little guy stop, he asked with a light smile, "What's wrong? Little brother, how do you spell Jieshu?" A Jew forgot. Little Baldy's brows were furrowed into a ball in distress. The smile on Bai Juan's lips grew wider. He carried the little guy over and placed her on his lap. Then his fair fingers reached over and held a Jew's hand. Two beautiful words clearly appeared in the diary, "Accept." Little Baldy looked at the handwriting that was obviously different from hers. She felt that her handwriting was too much like a dog's. Why was that? "My handwriting is not good." The little guy raised his head and asked, "If my handwriting is not good, will I get a 0 in the exam?" Bai Juan pinched her face and comforted her. "No, bad handwriting is usually hereditary." "Really?" "Yes." It had to be said that from a certain point of view, young Master Bai immediately gave the truth. Little Baldy finally finished writing today's diary. She closed the small notebook and said, "I'm going to wash up." Chapter 11:24. Take a bath. Bai Juan recalled the situation when little Baldy washed his hands previously. He thought for a moment and said, "I'll help you wash. It's too slippery in the bathtub so you won't be able to stand steadily." Little Baldy shook his head and said, "No, Woolly Buddha said that I have to do my own things. Master told me to wash myself clean by myself. There's nothing wrong with that." Bai Juan saw that he could not persuade the child, so he could only choose a compromise. He told little Baldy not to lock the door and waited outside. Something happened, he could go in at any time. Little Baldy felt that his little brother was making a fuss. How could he fall? As for the wash basin incident, he was too curious and did not control himself. It would definitely not happen a second time. This time nothing happened to little Baldy. He took off his clothes and stood under the rain, wiping his back in a dignified manner. If Bai Juan came in at this time, he would definitely find that the little junior brother in his heart was not a boy, but a little girl. After little Baldy finished washing, he put on his little pajamas. In fact, it was also a monk's robe but of a different type. One of the good things about being a monk was that he did not need to dry his hair. Bai Juan watched the little guy walk out of the bathroom with his clothes in his hands. Only then did he subconsciously heave a sigh of relief. "Little brother, where is the wash basin?" Little Baldy raised his head and asked. Bai Juan was puzzled. "Wash basin? Yes, I want to wash my clothes," little Baldy said with a serious expression. "Otherwise, if I wash them a little later, they won't be able to dry the next day." Bai Juan originally wanted to say that there was no need to wash those monk robes. He could just throw them away and buy new ones. However, when he thought about his child's character, Bai Juan patted the little guy's head. "With Auntie Wong around, give the dirty clothes to her. She will take care of them." "No," little Baldy said in a childish voice, "I want to wash my own clothes. Auntie Wong washed your clothes because she took your reward." "I didn't give Auntie Wong any reward. In fact, you can also give me your clothes to wash. Although Master said that every time I wash the clothes, he has to let senior brother wash them again. But Buddha Wooly said that labor is the most glorious." This was clearly what the party members said, not what the temple taught. Bai Juan really didn't know what to do with the little guy. Anyway, the child ate a lot at night, so he just treated it as exercise. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if the little guy didn't have enough food in his stomach. Therefore, Bai Juan did not tell little Baldy that there was such a thing as a washing machine in the world. Instead, he fulfilled little Baldy's wish. Little Baldy arranged the washing powder and soap on the ground. She carried the wash basin and filled it with water. Then she ran to Bai Juan and asked, "Little brother, do you have any clothes that need to be washed?" Bai Juan thought for a moment. He really needed to train the little guy's hands-on ability. After all, he was a boy, so he casually threw a white t-shirt to him. "Wash it slowly." "Yes." Little Baldy finally felt that she was of some use in this house. She placed her little Kasaya and little brother's white t-shirt into the wash basin. She poured the clothes into the wash basin, bent her little body and washed them very seriously. The white cat was nestled by her feet. It first glanced at Baizhuan, then leaned its head on the little master's instep. Little Baldy was very happy to wash. Baizhuan sat at the side, looking at the child who was seriously struggling with the washing powder bubbles. He watched as she tugged at her t-shirt and rubbed it. When she raised her hand, her little nose and head were full of bubbles. He could not help but laugh. Although he treated him like trash, his mother would give him whatever he wanted. It was not strange for him to have a cell phone. Not to mention the Bai family. Master Bai did not come back often. Baizhuan was the one who made the decision. He could buy whatever he wanted. Usually the electronic products were the latest. He also did his homework on the tablet. After all, the children in the city now handed in their homework and had to send it to the teacher's mailbox. Baizhuan glanced at WeChat and only replied with 5 words. I'm not playing. I'm accompanying my younger brother. No way. Master Li looked at the reply and shook his head. Was Baizhuan really addicted to raising other people's children? It was unlikely. With Master Bai's personality, it was probably only for a day. Chapter 11:25. But in fact Master Li was wrong this time. Baizhuan was very patient when it came to little Baldy. He turned off the lights and went to sleep. Little Baldy was afraid that he would squeeze Baizhuan, so he carefully crossed over and slept on the side. Baizhuan went to bed 10 minutes later than little Baldy. It was said that children were short of water at night. If the weather was too dry, it was easy to have a nosebleed, so it was necessary to prepare some water. This was the first time young Master Bai was so considerate for others. When pouring water, even Auntie Wang wanted to help. Baizhuan said that he would do it himself. After testing the temperature of the water, he put a drop of honey in it for the child. Only then did he take the things upstairs. When he entered the room, it was very quiet. Seeing that the little guy was already in a daze, Baizhuan called out in a low voice, "A Jew?" Little bald head grunted and didn't even turn over. Baizhuan rubbed his little palm with his fingers. There were red marks left from the fight today. Did it still hurt? In the future, whoever fought with his child, he would let that person have a taste of what pain was like. Even if the little guy won, it would be the same. Probably because Baizhuan rubbed the painful spot, little Baldy shrunk his hand like a little turtle. When Baizhuan saw this, he thought that if he had not taken a closer look at night, the little guy definitely would not have told him that his palm was injured. Baizhuan had lived in someone else's house before, so he knew what it felt like to live under someone else's roof. It was because he knew that he cared more about it. Little Baldy was completely asleep. His little hand grabbed Baizhuan's pajamas and his little face followed suit. Baizhuan did not dislike him at all. He lowered his eyes with a faint smile and gently blew 2 breaths on the little guy's palm. Then he hugged the little guy in his arms. The temperature of the air conditioner in the bedroom was adjusted to the most suitable temperature for human sleep, 25 degrees Celsius. The 9-year-old Baizhuan hugged the 4-year-old little Baldy and slowly closed his eyes. It had been a long time since he had slept so naturally. In the depths of his memory, it seemed that when he was still very young, his mother would accompany him to have such peace of mind. When Baizhuan woke up, the sky had just brightened. The little guy in his arms seemed to have woken up a long time ago. He looked at him with a pair of big round eyes. Baizhuan lowered his head and looked along little Baldy's tender legs. His gaze finally landed on a weak and sensitive fatal part of his body. Fortunately, the little guy was a boy. Otherwise, such a sleeping posture would be a little indecent. "Little brother, are you awake?" Little Baldy said excitedly, "I just went downstairs to run one round. Auntie Wang said that she would make your favorite wild vegetables today. I will go out with Auntie Wang to buy youtiao for you in a while. Auntie Wang told me not to disturb you. I just wanted to come up and see you. I didn't want to wake you up. But little brother, I still want to say something. Woolly Buddha said that only by sleeping early and waking up early can one live a long life." Baizhuan was really sleepy. If it was someone else who disturbed him like this, the outcome would definitely be ugly. At the beginning, Baizhuan's expression was a little bad. After listening to the child's nagging, he knew that she was thinking about him. His heart felt warm. He lifted the quilt and covered little Baldy with it. "Sleep with big brother for a while." When Baizhuan closed his eyes, his eyelashes were thick and dense, and his skin was unbelievably delicate. In addition, he was originally noble, so when he looked at him like this, he was even more good-looking. Little Baldy was being carried by Baizhuan, so she could not move around casually. She had to listen to Auntie Wang's words. She could not disturb little brother's sleep, but she could not say anything else. Buddha had said that the best plan of the day was in the morning. She still had to go for morning exercise. What should she do? She was really conflicted. Little Baldy frowned and looked in Baizhuan's direction. Seeing that his breathing had calmed down, she could not help but let out a long sigh. She had heard from her master before that some injured children always like to sleep with things in their arms. Little brother must have been injured before. In order to make little brother feel more at ease, it was better for her not to go for morning exercise. She was definitely not looking for an excuse for herself. Even if Buddha knew, he would forgive her. Thinking of this, little Baldy immediately stopped being conflicted. She stretched out her soft little hand and hugged little brother's waist. She yawned and fell asleep just like that. Only then did Baizhuan open his eyes. He looked at the little guy and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. When the two children really woke up, it was 7:40 a.m., not even 8 o'clock a.m. Auntie Wang had set up the breakfast. There was millet porridge, small buns, small cold dishes, and the fried dough sticks that little Baldy had always wanted to eat. Baizhuan first carried the child into the bathroom, squeezed toothpaste for her, and let her brush her teeth with the small toothpaste. Two people appeared in the mirror at once. There was Baizhuan's face and the little guy's little head. For some reason, Baizhuan wanted to laugh when he saw it. This feeling of not having to be alone was really good. Previously, he was not willing to adopt anyone. To be honest, Baizhuan had always been a very selfish person. He did not want any accidents to happen in his life. If it were not for his grandfather's insistence and his master's persuasion, he definitely would not have gone to the temple to bring little Baldy back. But now, just as his grandfather had hoped, he seemed to have a human aura. Moreover, Baizhuan was very clear that this was all because of the little guy in front of him. If it were someone else, he would not have such a feeling. In the future, this person would be his. That was probably how he felt. He had to be responsible for the little guy. After all, Aju was still so young. She would definitely be bullied when she went out. But in fact, everyone knew that with little Baldy's ability to fight, it was already good enough that she did not bully others when she went out. How could she be bullied? Just as Baizhuan was distracted. Little Baldy licked her little lips and said seriously, "Little brother, this toothpaste is very delicious. It's completely different from the one my master bought for me in the past." Baizhuan was speechless. This attribute of being able to eat anything had to be changed immediately. Little Baldy only tasted the taste. She was not stupid enough to really eat the toothpaste. This was the cutest. She gulped down a big mouthful of water. After rinsing her mouth, she lowered her little head and spat out the water in the sink. Baizhuan patted his child's head and wiped her face. Then the two of them walked out of the bathroom. Auntie Wang felt gratified when she saw this scene. After Baizhuan's parents passed away, she came to the Bai family. At that time, the Bai family had already changed 3 cooking aunties. The old chief was often not at home, leaving the young master alone. In the beginning, those cooking aunties still cooked for the young master obediently. Later on, they began to be scheming. It was said that there was once an auntie who wanted to take the Bai family's money while the old chief was not around. After being discovered by the young master, she said that she wanted to buy delicious food for the young master and told him not to talk nonsense. Chapter 11:26. At that time, the young master was indifferent to everything. He did not even inform the old master. He directly called the adjutant in and dismissed that auntie. Such an action was undoubtedly a sign of overmaturity for a 5-year-old child. The old chief's worry also began at that time. Because after that time, the old chief consulted a psychiatrist for the young master. At that time, the psychiatrist only gave the old chief one sentence, saying that the young master was still young and not obvious. In the future, whether he walked on the military or political path, such a person would only do things ruthlessly because in his heart, there was no love at all. In fact, if he was a little more extreme, he would become a dark figure. Once he committed a crime, he was even more vicious than a real outlaw. Now that little Aju was here, looking at the way the young master spoiled the child, he was really no different from other people of the same age. Except for when it came to dealing with little Aju, the young master liked to do it himself. He was more composed than young Master Li and the others, but the smile between his brows was warm. Little Baldy was already sitting on a small chair and eating with a small spoon. When they were almost done eating, someone came in from outside. It was Lin Ziwen, Master Li, and the others who had talked about little Baldy yesterday. When Lin Ziwen first entered the room, her small face was a little ugly. She had already tried her best to smile. Children nowadays were different from before. They knew a lot of things at such a young age. Even if she did not like little Baldy in her heart, Lin Ziwen would not show it. She only said to Bai Juan, "I was wrong yesterday. Since Aju has entered the Bai family, she is a member of the Bai family. In the future I will treat Aju like my own younger brother. Brother Bai Jun, can you not be angry with me? I didn't mean to say that about Aju." Behind Lin Ziwen was a group of other children, both men and women. Everyone stood there and looked at Bai Juan. This undoubtedly showed Bai Juan's status as the king of children in the military compound. Little Baldy was eating happily. He raised his head from the big bowl and sized up the people who came in with his clear and bright eyes. Bai Juan patted the child's head. "Don't look around when you eat." Little Baldy was very obedient. He didn't look at anyone anymore and stuffed a small vegetable bun into his mouth. His cheeks were puffed up and he looked very cute. Looking at the way she ate, Li Hailu felt hungry. He licked his lips and looked at Bai Juan. "Do you still have vegetable buns in your house?" "Yes." Bai Juan glanced at him and said indifferently, "There are still 3 left. I want to leave them for Aju as snacks." Li Hailu truly felt that Bai Juan was someone who didn't want him as a brother after having a younger brother. "Forget it, I won't eat today. I'll eat at your house tomorrow." As little gangster Li spoke, he turned his head and shouted at the top of his voice, "Auntie Wong, when you cook tomorrow, cook mine too." Little Baldy did not understand. She turned around and asked Bai Juan, "Why did you come over to eat tomorrow? You can eat lunch and dinner today." "Little brother, has Master Li always been so stupid? Is that why he got a duck egg in the exam?" Little gangster Li was speechless. Inexplicably, he felt that his intelligence was being looked down upon. However, the little monk was right. "Auntie Wong, I'll eat here for lunch today." Bai Juan put down the wooden chopsticks in his hand. He did not even look at Lin Ziwen, who was standing beside him. He tidied up his sleeves and said, "I can't eat at noon today. I'm going to take Aju out to buy clothes in a while." "Buy clothes? Go shopping?" Li Hailu's eyes lit up. He grabbed Bai Juan and said, Take me, take me. You don't know how strict my father is on me now. I can only run to your house. He won't let me go anywhere. I'm going to grow hair on my body. I'm going shopping and eating Burger King." "You can't eat Burger King. You have to give Aju a vegetarian diet." Bai Juan pushed his hand away. Li Hailu did not care about food anymore. "I can eat anything as long as I can go out. You treat me to a meal." Bai Juan had always known how to trick his brother. Li Hailu gritted his teeth. "Add a condition. Let me copy your homework." "Sure," Bai Juan said as he picked up little Baldy, who was full. The rest of the children looked at each other. Lin Ziwen also wanted to go out. After hearing the news, she even went home and asked the driver to specially prepare a car. She originally wanted to follow the Bai family's car all the way. She did not expect that she would waste too much time combing her hair. When she went out, Bai Juan's car was already gone. The Bai family's car was big to begin with. It was a military Hummer. Other than the driver, it could also seat about 5 adults. It was more than enough for 5 children to sit in it. Other than Li Hailu, there were 2 other people in it. One of the children spoke very little. From the beginning to the end, he only sat there. The other was chatting happily with Li Hailu. "It's all thanks to little Gio wanting to buy clothes. Otherwise, my father would definitely not let me out. This is a good reason. Then can we all use little Gio as a topic in the future? I think this method will work." Little boys who were close to 10 years old were the most troublesome, especially those in the imperial capital. They had clearly not reached puberty yet, but they were already like little adults. All day long, they kept saying that they would wait until they entered junior high school and must find a school belle to be their girlfriend. In other words, they already knew how to look at beautiful girls on the street. "Look, what do you think of that one? Her legs are so long." Little Baldy was held in by Juan's hand. Every time she saw Li Hailu pointing at those young ladies, she would say at ba. Then she raised her little face and asked Baizhuan, "Little brother, why does Li Hailu always have a soft spot for female tigers? He's a fool with a lot of money." After Baizhuan said that, he did not forget to add, "So remember, when you grow up, don't be like him. It's not handsome to be unable to walk when you see a girl." Little Baldy nodded very seriously. "Little brother, don't worry. I'm not that stupid." Li Hailu, who had been attacked countless times, no longer wanted to listen to what the two brothers behind him were saying. In short, he was always used as a reference for bad things. Li Hailu was already used to it. To him, as long as he was allowed to come out and take a breather, life was beautiful. Little Baldy had never shopped in a mall before. The distance from the parking lot to the other side of the overpass was not short. This was also the reason why Baizhuan chose to go out at around 9 o'clock. Generally, large malls such as the Great U-City National Trade Center opened at 10 o'clock. At this time, the sun would not be very bright and there were few people, so it would not squeeze the children. Before they entered the mall, the big screen had already started to display advertisements for clothing brands. Most of them were endorsements by celebrities and they looked very fashionable. Little Baldy said seriously, "I'm even happier than eating 10 bowls of white rice." Baizhuan was speechless. Today's lunch could be directly eaten with white rice. A group of half-grown children coming to the mall to shop was always very eye-catching. In addition, these children were all very good-looking. The most eye-catching thing was that there was a little monk among them. Many people saw it and wanted to take a photo of little Baldy. After all, he looked too cute in a monk's robe. Baizhuan was protecting the child at the side. After arriving at the mall, he went directly to the place where sunglasses were sold and chose a pair of small sunglasses for little Baldy to block the sun. Li Hailu also tried it on at the side. However, the four boys' greatest interest was to dress up little Baldy. After choosing the sunglasses, they greeted little Baldy with small school bags and small watches one after another. The four boys were having a great time. Looking at the things hanging on little Baldy's body, they felt a sense of accomplishment. In fact, Baizhuan would not really go out without people. It was just that the Bai family had always kept a low profile. Two special forces soldiers in casual clothes followed the children at a leisurely pace. Outsiders could not tell at all. After buying these bits and pieces, Baizhuan brought the child directly to the third floor. It was specially for children's clothes and the brands were very well known. Baizhuan felt that the most important thing was to buy 2 pajamas and a few pairs of underwear for the child first. He could not always let a Jew sleep in a monk's robe. The quality of the clothes on the third floor was generally very good, and the material was soft to the touch. Baizhuan immediately took a fancy to one of the yellow kitten pajamas. Such pajamas would definitely look good on a Jew. She even had a pair of furry little ears. She was very cute. Although the color was a little feminine, a Jew was only 4 years old. It should not be a problem for her to wear any color. With this thought in mind, young Master Bai wanted the salesperson to take down the pajamas. It was the first time the salesperson had seen a few children buying clothes alone. She tiptoed and looked behind them. Then she said indifferently, "You can only try it on with your parents." Baizhuan heard this and opened Li Hailu's backpack. He took out a card and casually handed it to the salesperson. His voice was very indifferent and did not have any other meaning. "Take the clothes down. We want to try them on." Only then did the salesperson realize that even if the other party was a child in a place like the capital, there were many children of officials who would come to shop by themselves. Now that she saw the card in Baizhuan's hand, she immediately changed her attitude. She took the cat pajamas and handed it over. "Young master, you really have good taste. This pajamas is especially good in our shop. Who do you want to buy it for? What's the size? My brother will wear it." Chapter 11:28. Baizhuan was not at ease leaving the child in the hands of such a powerful salesperson, even if she changed her clothes. Moreover, although a Jew was very young, she was still a boy. From the perspective of self-esteem, it was more appropriate for him to go in and help the child change her clothes. It had to be said that young Master Bai had considered everything very thoroughly. However, there was one thing that he had not expected at all, and that was that little Baldy would be a girl. In order to make Aju comfortable, Bai Juan asked the salesperson for 2 pairs of underwear with black and white pandas printed on them. He was prepared to change the child's clothes from top to bottom. Little Aju also felt that compared to a woman, she wanted the little brother to change her clothes more. This woman at the foot of the mountain also looked like a tiger. Besides, she was a boy. Boys shouldn't let women look at their bodies. She still understood this little principle. Yes. Little Aju nodded her big head again. Bai Juan held the child's hand and entered the fitting room, leaving Master Li and the others to look at other things. The monk's robe had a drill. Little Aju was like a little turtle. She first broke free from it, then looked at Bai Juan and blinked her eyes. Take off the inner shirt and underwear as well. As Bai Juan said this, he lowered his head to tidy up the child's pajamas. When Aju put them on, she only needed to open her arms. Little Baldy was very obedient. She took off the inner shirt when she was told to. She bit the corner of her clothes with her small mouth and revealed her bare little body with a whoosh. When Bai Juan lowered his head to pick out the clothes, he also took off the last bit of underwear. The corners of young Master Bai's mouth were still curled up. When he turned around, the clothes in his hand fell to the ground along with his wallet with a snap. For the first time in his life, young Master Bai experienced what it meant to be dumbfounded. Outside, Master Li and the others heard the sound of the fitting room. They thought that something had happened, so they knocked on the door. What's wrong, Master Bai? Is it that the child's clothes are particularly difficult to wear? Open the door and let me in. I'll help you put them on. No need. Bai Juan took a deep breath and stretched out his hand to wrap little Baldy up. He shouted behind him in a slightly irritable manner, "If you dare to sneak in, you don't have to think about copying today's homework." Master Li, who had already put his hand on the doorknob, withdrew his hand in embarrassment and touched the bridge of his nose. Bai Juan was really too scary. He even knew what he wanted to do next. Little Baldy did not understand why her brother had suddenly become like this. She looked at Bai Juan in a daze and said, "Brother, didn't you say that you were going to dress me? It's so uncomfortable to be wrapped around me like this." Bai Juan lowered his head to look at the younger brother in his arms. Fuck your little brother. This was clearly a girl. Why didn't his stupid master let him know when he mistakenly thought that little Aju was a girl? Could it be that master did it on purpose? After thinking this through, Bai Juan's expression was not very good. In general, he felt like he had been struck by lightning. His original plan was to raise his child into an indomitable young man. Now, how do you raise a girl? He had no experience at all. Little brother, what's wrong with you? Little Baldy scratched his big head. He looks like he's going to lose his mind. Bai Juan's mind was still spinning. His master deliberately did not want him to know. What about Aju? Why didn't she say anything? Wait a minute, the child seemed to have said from the day she went down the mountain, the woman at the foot of the mountain is a tiger. She even made it clear that she was a boy. Could it be? When Bai Juan thought of this, his eyes flashed and he asked tentatively, "Aju, do you think I'm a man or a woman?" "A man." Little Baldy stretched out his small hand and touched Bai Juan's head. "Why are you asking such a stupid question? Could it be that you have been infected by Master Li's negative IQ?" Master Li was speechless. "What about you? Are you a man or a woman?" Bai Juan continued to ask. Little Baldy put his 2 small hands on his waist and even his cheeks puffed up. "A boy. Little brother, the questions you asked today are so strange. I'm so manly and I'm going to be the abbot of the temple in the future. Of course I'm a boy. Look at my head, it's already shaved like a little monk. The temple doesn't accept girls. If you ask me like this, it's obvious that you're uncultured. It's really insulting, woolly Buddha." "Manly." Bai Juan reached out and covered his forehead. He suddenly felt a headache. When he first brought the child over, he did feel that a child like little Ju would definitely be a boyfriend when he grew up. For this, he felt that it was not bad. After all, he did not like petty boys. But little Ju was a girl, a girl. Bai Juan felt that what he needed to do the most now was to let the child realize the fact that he was a girl. "Little Ju, come sit properly." Bai Juan swore that he had never been so patient. Little Baldy tugged at the clothes wrapped around his body in confusion. "Aren't you going to wear clothes?" "Yes, you have to wear clothes first." Bai Juan looked at the little guy in front of him. He was holding a small underwear in his hand. He was really embarrassed. "You wear them yourself." Little Baldy nodded. The child was indeed obedient, but the kitten pajamas were a little difficult to wear. Baijuan turned his back and waited for a long time. He had also done a lot of psychological preparation. Little Baldy stretched out his little hand with great effort. Little brother, is this how you wear this? Baijuan turned his head and saw that the little guy had worn the kitten pajamas like a barrel sack. The clothes hung loosely on little Baldy's body, making his eyes even bigger. He still looked a little funny, like a kitten that had been thrown aside. Baijuan gritted his teeth. He thought that even if little Jia was a girl, she was only 4 years old. It should be fine for him to help her wear the pajamas outside. Little Jia, be good. Raise your hands. Baijuan squatted down just enough so that his eyes could be at the same level as little Baldy's. Little Baldy nodded. His 2 little arms obediently stretched up. He looked so obedient and cute that Baijuan subconsciously kissed his forehead. After the kiss, young Master Bai paused for a moment. The little guy was fine. He rubbed his forehead and smiled sweetly at Baijuan. He continued to raise his little hand seriously and said, "Little brother, fortunately you are a man. I read in the Buddhist scriptures that a person with a calm mind cannot be kissed by a girl. If that happens, I will break the precept. After breaking the precept, I will not be able to be the abbot of the temple." How obsessed was he to be in charge? Child Bai also smiled. Even if she was a girl, it didn't matter. She was his. However, there was one thing that had to be changed. That was the education policy. Chapter 11:29. Baijuan reached out and straightened the tail on the child's pajamas. Then he turned her sleeve. In less than half a minute, a cute little tabby cat came out of the oven, steaming hot. Little Baldy followed behind Baijuan just like that, like a little mascot. Li Hailu watched from the side and couldn't help but exclaim, "Fuck, what's that saying? Buddha relies on gold and people rely on clothes. Aju looks really good in pajamas. Come, little Aju, come and take a photo with me. I'll make those who don't have a younger brother envious to death." Baijuan pulled the child back and said to Li Hailu, "I have something to discuss with you." Li Hailu was stunned. That was Master Bai. Master Bai had done everything by himself since he was young. When had he ever been kind to others? Li Hailu was excited and shouted, "What's the matter? What's the matter? Let's talk about it later." Baijuan glanced at the other 2 friends beside him. "Let's find a place first." Li Hailu suggested, "The Burger King is downstairs." "You forgot that Aju can't eat meat." Shaolin reminded him. He had never liked to talk and his voice was cold. If he did not like little Baldy, he definitely would not have let her notice him. Li Hailu patted his head. "We can only order cola ice cream and fries. Aju definitely hasn't eaten fries before. Children love fries." "Fries?" Little Baldy leaned over with her big bald head. "What's that?" Li Hailu spread his hands, meaning, "Look. Hey, let's go to the Burger King." Baijuan held little Baldy's hand and wanted to leave. Little Baldy twisted her little body. "Monk's robe, my monk's robe." According to the child's personality, if he said to throw it away, it would definitely not be allowed. Baijuan asked the salesperson to put the monk's robe on the child. He brought the little tabby cat downstairs. Not being able to eat meat was simply torture for boys. Little Baldy also saw it. She raised her small face and said to little Gangster Lee, who was in line, "You can order meat, but a Jew doesn't eat meat. You can eat it. I want to cultivate." Woolly Buddha said that you can't ask others to eat vegetarian like you. You have to be tolerant. When you grow up, you don't need to be abbot. When Master Li heard this, he turned around and glanced at Baijuan. "Master Bai, do you feel that the words that your child says are always so likable? They are all great principles that even adults can't do. What's that called again?" "Great wisdom appears to be stupidity." Baijuan's voice was very indifferent. "You guys order. I'll bring little Nine to the big table to sit." Little Gangster Lee made an okay gesture. Without the consideration of meat, little Gangster Lee was having a great time ordering. He ordered all kinds of overlord chicken strips and fragrant spicy chicken wings. After all, they still had to eat lunch later, so they had to eat some snacks to fill their stomachs first. At that time, he didn't know little Baldy's appetite, so he ordered an ice cream cone and a small serving of fries for the little girl. After all, Baijuan was so obsessed with his brother. If he ordered too much and little Aju couldn't digest it, Baijuan would definitely drag him over and beat him up. This plate was just right. Little Gangster Lee confidently carried the food to the long table and inserted a straw into the Coke. Usually his father was strict and didn't let him drink these things at all. Now he could finally drink without any scruples. On a hot summer day, drinking a mouthful of Coke filled with ice was extremely satisfying. Little Aju stood there and looked at her brothers and then at her own. It was a little too little. By the way, brother, what do you want to discuss with us? Every time Little Gangster Lee spoke, his voice was mixed. Bai Juan glanced at the child standing at the side and saw that little Baldy was circling around his cat tail. His voice was slightly lowered. Aju is a girl. Pfft. Little Gangster Lee spat out a mouthful of Coke. Little Baldy and Bai Juan had both learned martial arts since they were young. Their reaction speed was extremely fast and they dodged in a flash. The other two people were not so lucky. They were spat in the face by Little Gangster Lee. No, cough, cough, cough. Master Bai, what did you say? Little Gangster Lee's eyes widened. Our little monk is a girl? A delicate girl like the prettiest girl in the academy? Bai Juan looked at him calmly. That's my girl, not yours. I'm not a girl. Little Baldy was very angry. She looked at Little Gangster Lee seriously and denied it very firmly. Little Gangster Lee didn't listen to Little Baldy and only looked at Bai Juan. The other two people also wiped their faces with a tissue. After one of them gave Little Gangster Lee a punch, they also waited for Bai Juan's answer. I found out when I was changing her clothes just now. Bai Juan made the decision, so it definitely couldn't be fake. Little Gangster Lee was dumbfounded. He rubbed his handsome face. But Little Aju said that she's not a girl. She thinks she's a boy. Bai Juan rubbed his aching forehead. That's why I wanted to discuss with you guys how to make her believe that she's a girl. Little Baldy was still shaking her head solemnly. I'm not a girl. Little brother, I'm not a girl. I'm not a girl. When the little person denied something, she really buzzed like a little fly. However, she was always cuter than ordinary children. Her voice was not loud and she even spun in circles to chase the cattail on his pajamas. Don't doubt, this was the latest toy that Little Baldy found for him. Master Bai, can you let her be quiet first? Little Gangster Lee didn't know why. Why did the little person keep spinning around him? His eyes were dizzy. Bai Juan was worried that the child would spin too much, which was not good for her body. He stopped Little Baldy and fed her a French fry. Little Baldy was really angry at first. She didn't understand. She was clearly the person who was going to be the abbot in the future. Why did little brother think that she was a girl? But little brother was very good to her. He even fed her a very delicious thing. It was sweet and crisp. It was a little like a baked potato, but it was better than a baked potato. The little person was immediately happy. She temporarily put aside the question of whether she was a boy or a girl and raised her little face to accept Bai Juan's feeding. You still have a way. Little Gangster Lee gave Bai Juan a thumbs up with a face full of admiration. If he had to take care of a 4-year-old child all day long, he would go crazy. Fortunately, Little Aju was still quite obedient. It was just that the question of whether she was a boy or a girl. He had never met a child who would mistake his own gender. Aju's will is so firm. It will definitely be difficult to change her perception of herself. Brother Bai, haven't you been to Shaolin Temple before? Since you and Aju are from the same sect, do you want to ask your master how to deal with this matter? Chapter 1130. Bai Juan listened to Xiao Lin and the others' opinions and felt that this was the only feasible option. There has never been a signal on the mountain, so it's very difficult to contact Master. Go back. Li Hailu bit the chicken wing in his mouth. Are you going to send little Aju away? Hearing that she was going to be sent away, little Baldy stopped chasing after her cattail and looked at Bai Juan with her big eyes. Don't talk nonsense. I won't send Aju away. Bai Juan let the child continue to play. His eating manners were obviously more gentlemanly. Moreover, you can't go back at all. What do you mean? Li Hailu looked at Bai Juan blankly and lowered his voice. Didn't little Aju say that she wants to go back to be an abbot in the future? Why can't she go back? Bai Juan glanced at little Baldy. Seeing that the child was focused on eating, he whispered to little Gangster Lee, all those who are fated to leave the temple will get lost when they go to the mountain again. Unless they are led by the master himself or what? Li Hailu had never seen such a magical temple before. Bai Juan paused for a moment, his eyes deep. Or one of the Buddhas. Li Hailu felt that the world was a fantasy. Then little Baldy won't be able to go back. Bai Juan rubbed his fingers as if he was deep in thought. I always feel that a Jew is different. What's different? Li Hailu still felt that his thoughts could not keep up with Master Bai's. Bai Juan narrowed his eyes. The temple has never accepted women. This is an unclean reflection of Buddhism. Master is not such a person who does not know his limits. Moreover, little a Jew entered the temple too early. She is the only one who entered the temple from birth. So what do you mean? Li Hailu's brain capacity was obviously not enough. Bai Juan did not continue. He just looked at him coldly. With your IQ you won't understand. Fuck. Li Hailu bit the chicken wing fiercely. Shaolin took a sip of Coke. Maybe there's a way to try. What way? School is about to start. Little Aju is 4 years old. Find a connection and let her follow us to school first. You want a 4-year-old child to follow us to the 4th grade. Let her have more contact with girls. Aren't there many girls in our class? But she can still go to kindergarten, right? They are just a bunch of little brats in kindergarten. How could they teach her the difference between men and women? Moreover, little Aju is so smart. It shouldn't be a problem for her to go there for only 1 semester. That would require the approval of the family. At this time Child Bai said, I agree. Little Gangster Li hesitated. Without Grandpa Bai's permission? Bai Juan wiped the corner of the child's mouth. I'm a Jew's adopter. Grandpa is busy at the border, so there's no need for him to come over for this kind of thing. Shaolin, you still have to ask Auntie Xiao for help with school matters. No problem. The Xiao family's maternal grandfather's side had been literary heroes for generations, and Auntie Xiao was the school's principal. She had been leading their class along the way. What's more, the primary school they went to was in the military, so it was different from the ordinary ones. It shouldn't be too difficult for a Jew to go in. Child Bai finally solved one of his worries. Little Baldy was still burying his head in eating the fries. After a while he finished the fries and began to eat another bag of ketchup. Child Bai knew at a glance that the child hadn't eaten enough. He stood up and went to the window to ask for 2 more large fries for the child. Little Baldy was really happy this time. He stretched out his little claws and hugged Bai Juan's leg. His little face was pink as he said, Little brother is still the best. Little Gangster Li only let me eat a little. Although Woolly Buddha said that you should be grateful when others give you something, such a small amount of potato chips is really not enough for a Jew to eat. Little Gangster Li, who had been shot countless times, was speechless. However, the little girl was still very good to Little Gangster Li. She was very grateful and gave half of the fries that Bai Juan gave her to her brothers. She even gave Little Gangster Li an extra bag of ketchup. Little Gangster Li was so touched that he wanted to hug Little Baldy and kiss her a few times. However, he was kicked aside by Bai Juan. Shaolin was in charge of taking photos. With a click of his phone he saved Little Gangster Li's photo in his photo album. Although the few of them had been bickering and their personalities were different, it could be seen that they had a good relationship. Many people were envious of having such a childhood. During lunch, Shaolin even took a group photo for everyone. In the photo, Shaolin was holding his finger and another boy was hugging Little Gangster Li's neck. The most eye-catching one was Little Baldy, who was sitting in Bai Juan's arms. The cat's ears stood up and it did not know that it was taking a photo. It had a piece of vegetable in its mouth and looked at the camera adorably. As soon as this photo was posted on WeChat Moments, the grandparents in the courtyard began to like Shaolin. Only after going out alone, Lin Ziwen, who did not find Bai Juan and the others, fiercely threw her phone on the seat. She lay on the car and cried. She continued to cry until she returned home at night. Lin Ziwen's mother was also a child protector. When she saw her daughter crying, her heart ached. She first scolded the adjutant, then pulled Lin Ziwen to ask what was going on. Lin Ziwen hummed and wiped her tears. It's all because of that little country bumpkin from the village. She thinks that she is a member of the Bai family after entering the Bai family. She pesters brother Bai Juan all day long and won't let go. Mom, I hate that little country bumpkin. I hate it to death. Everything she sees is strange. He has never seen the world at all. She only knows how to spend the Bai family's money. You can't say that. Mother Lin glanced at her. But since she's from the outside, she should follow some rules. This child is obviously uneducated. She doesn't know the difference between cloud and mud at all. When I see this child next time, I'll help you say a few words. A little country bumpkin from the mountain dares to embarrass my daughter. These words were exactly what Lin Ziwen wanted, and the girl immediately laughed. Don't underestimate a girl's jealousy, especially this kind of little girl who had been wrong since she was young. When she did things, she was not more restrained than the adults. Knowing that her mother would help her deal with that little country bumpkin, she was relieved. You only know about Brother Baijun all day long. Mother Lin smiled and tapped Lin Ziwen's nose. What? Brother Baijun is mine to begin with. What's going on with this inexplicable little country bumpkin? In my opinion, why don't you ask your father to make a trip to the Bai family and help you set up a betrothal with your brother Baijun? Mom. Lin Ziwen stomped her feet. When Mother Lin said this, she actually had this plan. Although compared to the Bai family, the Lin family was a little weaker. But their family was not bad either. In addition, they were all on the same political front. Moreover, her daughter liked Baijun to begin with. Baijun's future was limitless. If the two families could become even closer, that would be the best. Chapter 1131. In the military compound, they were actually more particular about matching in terms of social status than ordinary families. However, these details were usually not known to people who were far away from the circle. It was actually a very simple matter. Usually what we learned was that the rich second generation married a celebrity and thought that they were very powerful. However, what really made the celebrities squeeze their heads to enter was the military and political circle. But no military officer would marry a celebrity. To put it cruelly, they only knew how to play. From the moment they were born, it meant that their other half had to be from the same family. If not, at the very least, they had to come from a well-off family and be well-educated. Mother Lin was confident that the Bai family would also choose her daughter. After all, it was obvious. Right now, she only had one thing in mind, and that was to find an opportunity to teach that poor kid from the mountain a lesson. Since they were here, they should follow the rules here. At 5:00 in the afternoon, when it was close to dusk, it suddenly started to rain sporadically in the imperial capital. The group of children who were the backbone of the group had finally returned. Baijun was still holding little Aju in his arms. The ground was full of water, so he did not let her go down. When the rest of the children saw the Bai family's car, they all recognized the license plate number. One by one they all came out. 4 of the 5 came to ask Baijun to copy their homework. After all, there were only 7 days left until the end of the summer vacation. If they did not take advantage of this time to copy what they could, when school reopened, they would definitely owe more debts. The most annoying thing was the diary that the teacher had given them. Oh my God, wasn't it making things difficult for a group of big boys to record their daily lives like girls? Could it be that they had to write in their diary every day, "Ah, the weather is so good today. I stayed at home and played online games for the whole day"? Or, "Today I went to the East Courtyard to fight with Brother Bai and the others. It was so cool." No matter what they wrote, the teacher would definitely let them call their parents. Therefore, the boys should not be allowed to write in their diary for summer homework. Wasn't this clearly asking them to lie to the teacher? If they did not want the teacher to criticize them, they could only write, "The weather is good today. I dream of the red chamber at home for the whole day." Or they could also write, "It's raining outside, so I can't go out with my parents. I obediently cooked a sumptuous dinner at home." That was why. Teacher, don't play tricks anymore. Can you be more sincere? The above were the original words of Li Hailu. Little Baldy couldn't understand these things. Firstly, she didn't know what League of Legends was. Secondly, she had to write in her diary every day. She was already used to it. Therefore, a group of boys sat beside the coffee table, sticking their little butts out and copying homework, while a few others held their noses and racked their brains to write diaries. Little Baldy also took his own diary. She felt that this kind of learning atmosphere was very good, although Li Hailu looked a little silly with a horizontal bar on his head. However, this did not affect little Baldy's mood. She lowered her head and clenched her fists as she wrote seriously, "Today little brother took me out to buy clothes. The clothes were very interesting. Xiao Bai and I have been chasing our tails. We were really very happy. Most importantly, I even saw him. He is even more handsome than in the photos. No wonder so many people like him. Wah Wooly Buddha, thank you." Thank you, Buddha. When the child was writing in her diary, Bai Juan was standing behind her. He was holding a bottle of BLK mineral water in his hand. When the youth drank the water, his side profile was especially beautiful, especially under the light from the corner of his eye. Even the tip of his nose seemed to emit a gentle light. When he saw the last sentence that little Aju wrote, most importantly, I even saw him, Bai Juan frowned. Although many people in their class liked that celebrity called Bailey Shangxie, he did not expect that Aju would also like this type of boy. Little brother, I've finished writing in my diary. Little Baldy stood up and reached out to touch her stomach. Shouldn't we eat? Bai Juan smiled. Seeing that the tail behind her was still swaying, he bent down and fed her a mouthful of water. Auntie Wang is still doing it. We can eat in a while. Yes. Little Baldy listened to Bai Juan the most. Seeing that he said so, she patrolled Li Hai Lu and the others with her little hands behind her back. In the end, she came to the conclusion that making this group of people do homework was more uncomfortable than making them eat durian. Little Baldy also noticed that Xiao Lin did not seem to need to write at all. He was standing in the living room and playing a game of killing fruits in front of the huge screen on the wall. Halfway through, Xiao Lin called and asked Little Baldy to kill it for him. Little Baldy also glanced at the side just now and cleverly learned how to play. As soon as she started, there were a few clattering sounds. When Xiao Lin came back, Little Baldy just happened to do a small somersault backward. Her tail swept on the ground and she landed perfectly. Xiao Lin was already dumbfounded. When he looked at the screen again, she actually broke the record. The record that he had been killing for an entire summer vacation was broken by a 4-year-old child just like that. No one who was born in the military compound admitted defeat. Xiao Lin narrowed his eyes and pulled up the shooting game. He played around first, so of course his results were good. After all, he was someone who had touched a real gun before. However, what he did not expect was that Aju actually shot more accurately than him and used less time. She was simply beating him. Aju, is this really your first time playing this game? I don't even know how to use this gun. I didn't press the first button just now. Otherwise, I would have fired all the shots. Xiao Lin was speechless. So the one you missed was the equipment you weren't familiar with? Xiao Lin turned his head and wanted to find Bai Juan for comfort. Your younger brother. Oh no, it's your younger sister. Is she really not a mechanical genius? You're too stupid. Bai Juan took the gun from his hand and then put on the game blindfold. With 3 bangs, each shot was a 10-ring crosshair. Moreover, it took very little time. Not only did he fire 10 shots in a row, but he also raised the difficulty level. Xiao Lin felt that it was a wrong decision to come to Bai Juan for comfort. This was simply a pair of siblings who tortured people to death without paying for their lives. After seeing Bai Juan's marksmanship, Little Baldy ignited an unprecedented desire to fight. She wanted to compete with her little brother. However, Bai Juan would not compete with her no matter what. He took her to wash her hands and fed the child a large bowl of dumplings. The dumplings were stuffed with cabbage. There were fried dough sticks in it, so it tasted especially delicious. Little Baldy ate until her stomach was bulging. Just as she was about to hug her little brother to sleep, Bai Juan said to her, "We can't sleep together in the future." Chapter 1132. Why? Little Baldy didn't understand. Everything was fine yesterday. Why did little brother suddenly change? Didn't he say that he wouldn't send her away? Bai Juan looked down at her. Aju, haven't you always thought that you were a boy? It's not that. Little Baldy seriously corrected Bai Juan. It's that I'm a boy. Little brother, don't forget that I'm going to be the host. Bai Juan facepalmed. It was happening again. Alright, you're going to be the host, but as for whether you're a man or a woman, we'll talk about that later. Bai Juan patted the child's head. It's not convenient for the two of us to sleep together now. You have to have your own room. Little Baldy's eyes were wide open and he didn't say anything else. His originally excited little face had lost the brightness from yesterday. Bai Juan did not want to see the child like this, so he could only coax him with food. Be good, let Auntie Wang take you to sleep. Come Aju, follow Auntie Wang. Auntie Wang also knew the gender of the child. Young master had instructed her to be more careful in the future. Things like dressing the child would probably be left to her. Little Baldy was also obedient. She wore kitten pajamas and the little ears on her head drooped down. She carried her little white cat and let Auntie Wang lead her to her room. After taking a step or two, she turned around to look at Bai Juan. She was so pitiful that she didn't like him. That look made Bai Juan wish that he could become a woman so that he could hug the child and sleep together. A Jew was sent to another room. Bai Juan was also worried. He had just sat in the room and done some English questions when he called Auntie Wang over. Nine is lying down. He's lying down. The child's eyes are red. He definitely doesn't want to leave young master. Auntie Wang, get her some water later. She gets thirsty easily when she's asleep. Yes. Also go in and check on her at night. Don't let her kick off her blanket. Even after giving his instructions, Bai Juan was still worried. When he thought of the child's small eyes just now, his heart clenched. But no matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't think of any good ideas, so he could only do this. Bai Juan did some English questions for a while and realized that he really couldn't concentrate. He put down the pencil in his hand, changed into a jersey and walked into the bathroom with a towel. After taking a shower, she finally felt a little more comfortable. She walked to the bedside, intending to lift the quilt and lie down. Who would have thought that as soon as she opened the lid, little Baldy's face would be revealed. The child was puffing out his cheeks, secretly competing with each other. Little brother, I've thought about it. I don't want to sleep alone. I promised Grandpa Bai that I would take care of you. You're too lonely by yourself. Even if you don't let me sleep on the bed, I can sleep on the floor with Xiao Bai. Or if you don't want me, you can send me back to the temple. I'm not a poor monk, I'm a monk with ambition. Bai Juan listened to the child's words and reached out to pull little Baldy out. Who said that you are a little poor monk? I'm just saying, little Baldy explained, to emphasize that I don't want to be separated from you. Bai Juan was amused by her serious look. You even know how to use metaphors? Little brother, laugh if you want to. Little Baldy hugged his two short arms and sat there like a roly-poly toy. Anyway, I don't want to sleep in separate rooms. Aren't we family? Shouldn't they be sleeping together as a family? Bai Juan was speechless. He actually couldn't refute this argument. I was very sleepy. As little Baldy spoke, he rubbed his eyes with his two little claws. But Woolly Buddha said that it's not right to sleep in someone else's bed without their permission. So I persisted for a long time, waiting for little brother to finish his homework and take a shower. I just wanted to ask little brother, can I sleep with you? I won't move around at night. I promise I'll be very obedient. Moreover, I'm very soft when you pinch me. If you don't believe me, you can pinch me. Bai Juan saw that the child was so sleepy that he couldn't even open his eyes. Then he thought about what he had just said. She had been cooped up here since he was doing his homework? Was she afraid that he would ask Auntie Wang to take him away? Bai Juan seemed to have thought of something. He lifted the little girl's back. It was already a little red. If he hadn't come out earlier, he would definitely have heat rashes. 2 days ago, he had told himself to take good care of the child. In the end, because of some male-female problem, he had to sleep in separate rooms from the child. He clearly knew that this little child was the most insecure. Bai Juan blamed himself and hugged little Aju. Is your back itchy? It's not itchy. I'm sleepy, little Baldy said vaguely. Bai Juan leaned over and blew 2 mouthfuls of cold air on him. Little Baldy only felt comfortable. As expected, little brother treated him the best. Go to sleep. Bai Juan gently patted the little girl in his arms and lay on the bed himself. He had been thinking too much. Little Aju was only 4 years old. Even if she was a girl, she was still a little girl. They didn't have to sleep in separate rooms now. It wouldn't be too late to separate after she knew that she was a girl. As Bai Juan thought about this, he gradually closed his eyes with someone in his arms. He was finally at ease. The next morning, Auntie Wang came up to clean up. She saw the 2 children sleeping in each other's arms through the half-open door. Little Aju was already younger than her peers. Being held in Bai Juan's arms, she looked even more simple and honest. Auntie Wang shook her head and smiled. She closed the door for the 2 children. In less than half an hour, little Baldy woke up. The sky had just brightened. Little Baldy took off his kitten pajamas and stretched out his little arms to put on the sportswear that Bai Juan had just bought for him yesterday. Life in the temple was very regular. Little Baldy's schedule had already been formed. He had to exercise in the morning to train his mind. This time he didn't wake Bai Juan up. He got up from the bed, jumped off the ground and changed into his little sneakers intending to go out. Finally he thought about it again. Yesterday he promised to buy breakfast for Auntie Wong, but he didn't do it. Today he had to fulfill his promise. Little Baldy turned around and ran to the kitchen. Auntie Wong was cooking cold dishes and boiling mung bean soup inside. "Ju, why are you up so early?" "I'm going to do my morning exercise and buy breakfast back." "What does Auntie Wong want to eat?" "Auntie Wong can go buy my baby. You should sleep more." "No need. Auntie Wong is cooking at home. I'll go out and buy it." Buddha Wooly said that this is called a perfect division of labor. The place to buy fried dough sticks and buns is in the cafeteria of the courtyard. It's just a turn to the left. Don't go by yourself. Get an adjutant to follow you. Although the courtyard was safe, Auntie Wong was still worried. She was afraid that the child would get lost. Little Baldy said seriously, "The uncles can't outrun me. I'm afraid that I'll tire them out." "You brat, how could they not outrun you?" Before Auntie Wong could finish her sentence, she saw little Baldy rush out like a small firestorm wheel. This. Chapter 1133. The facilities in the courtyard were good to begin with. There were tall locust trees everywhere, and when the breeze swayed, indescribable small white petals would appear. Many chiefs liked to practice military boxing below, and there were also people who ran around it. All of them were wearing camouflage uniforms. When little Baldy saw that someone was running with her, she became more energetic and began to speed up. That day little Gangster Lee was also dragged to the training garden by his father. As soon as he arrived he saw a small figure that was like a flaming will killing a group of soldiers in seconds. He rubbed his sleepy face and was a little dumbfounded. That was indeed little Aju. Little Gangster Lee's father was also a little stunned. After looking at her, he looked at his son and felt even more annoyed. "Look at her. Even a little kid runs faster than you." Little Gangster Lee was very careless. "She is the sister that Bai Jun brought back from the mountain. Of course she runs fast. You both live together. How can you be so different from the Bai family's child?" At this point little Gangster Lee's father wanted to kick his son's butt again. Little Gangster Lee snorted. "That's up to you. This is completely a genetic problem." "A genetic problem? I'll let you see what a genetic explosion is today." After a few laps, little Baldy was about to go buy breakfast when she saw little Gangster Lee being chased by his father all over the courtyard. In the end that person grabbed her arm and panted. "Little Aju, you have to save your brother. My father is chasing me and doesn't even care about his high blood pressure. Don't you think this is like father and son killing each other?" "You must have made Uncle angry again," little Baldy said righteously. "Otherwise how could he be beaten? Little brother never gets beaten." Little Gangster Lee was speechless. But Master Bai had never been a normal person since he was young. How could they compare? At this time little Gangster Lee's father also caught up. By the way, little Gangster Lee's father had a wild appearance since he was young. He was tall like a bear. In addition, he had been in the army all year round. When some children saw him, their first reaction was fear. Therefore, when facing little Baldy, he deliberately softened his tone. "Little Aju, right? Yesterday you went out to play with Brother Lee. Did you have fun?" Little Baldy answered seriously. "Brother Lee treated us to fried with him." "Fried potatoes?" Lee Bawang's father was confused. Little Gangster Lee explained to his father, "It's French fries. Little Aju loves to eat French fries. She only eats vegetarian food and doesn't eat meat." "Uncle, I'm going to buy breakfast for little brother. Can you ask Brother Lee to take me?" Little Baldy counted with his fingers. "The money I brought is neither too much nor too little. I can treat Uncle Lee to a cup of soy milk and a youtiao. The youtiao in the canteen is very delicious. I even ate it yesterday." Lee Bawang's father had never been invited to breakfast by such a young child. After hearing this he was very happy. He patted his son on the back with his thick palm and said, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take Aju to buy food." Cough 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 cough. Little Gangster Lee was about to be slapped to death. "Dad, I know you like children, but can you show some mercy? I'm your biological son." Little Gangster Lee's father raised his son crudely. In addition, little Gangster Lee's achievements made people want to throw him back into their stomachs. He gave a very serious order. Brat, go quickly. Yes. Little Gangster Lee saluted his father. Before leaving, Little Gangster Lee's father pulled him back and stuffed 100 yuan into his hands. He couldn't really let a Jew buy breakfast. The child was only a few years old. Little Gangster Lee patted his chest and said, "Dad, don't worry. I promised to spend all of it." He wanted to beat his son again. What should he do? At first, Little Gangster Lee thought that Little Baldy had money from Auntie Wong. Until Little Baldy took out a small package from his pocket and took out a 50 yuan note from it. Only then did Little Gangster Lee react. "What's this money?" "I brought it down from the temple." Little Baldy looked at the canteen and replied, "Master said that every year, my mother would donate a lot of incense money to the temple. Master asked me to bring some of it down the mountain." Little Gangster Lee said, "A part of it? The big package you're carrying? Oh, it's full of money." Little Baldy used the back of his little hand to wipe the sweat on his forehead. "Shouldn't you bring more money when you go out?" Little Gangster Lee scratched the wall. He had never thought that Little Baldy would be a rich woman. "Besides, I have to support you in the future." Little Baldy lowered his head and fiddled with his small package. "This little money is not enough. When I become an abbot, I can earn a lot of incense money." Little Gangster Lee was stunned. "You become an abbot to earn money? Monks also need to eat. If I don't earn money, how can I eat? How can I believe in woolly Buddha?" Little Baldy said matter-of-factly. Little Gangster Lee felt that his worldview had been overturned. Fortunately, the child had a conscience and bought him a cup of mung bean soup. He let him drink it and calm down. Although he had already seen Little Baldy's appetite, Little Gangster Lee still couldn't react to buying 6 vegetable buns and half a bag of fried dough sticks. "You and Baijun can't eat so much, right? These are all for myself. I've been exercising for a long time today, so I need to replenish my nutrition. Otherwise, I won't grow tall." Little Baldy said very seriously, "Little brother doesn't like to eat fried dough sticks. He likes to eat eggs. I'm going to buy him 10 tea eggs later." Little Gangster Lee was speechless. "Trust me, child. If you buy so many tea eggs back, your little brother will choke to death. No one can eat as much as you." Little Baldy didn't care about Little Gangster Lee's pitiful Lin Dayu's gaze. She was busy buying everyone their favorite food. Although Little Baldy looked very stupid, he still knew the basic principles. If someone bought something for him, he had to return the favor. Even if the little brother liked to support him, he couldn't always eat and drink for free in the Bai family. He had to do a lot of things. Little Baldy's thoughts were so straightforward. Li Hailu followed her from one place to the next. He was already exhausted. Little Baldy, on the other hand, was full of energy as he carried a lot of things. When he saw that Little Gangster Lee couldn't walk anymore, he even emptied a chubby little hand and directly dragged him away. Yes, she thought of the days when she dragged her martial nephews on the mountain. It was very happy. Little Gangster Lee, who was being dragged, struggled to get up. "Little Aju, I can walk on my own. I can walk on my own. Believe me." It was embarrassing enough to let a child who was so much younger than him carry breakfast. If he was dragged back by Little Aju, his father would definitely kick him to death when he saw him. The 2 children were talking happily, but at this moment, a mocking voice sounded from behind them. Chapter 1134. I was wondering why I couldn't buy anything so early in the morning. Turns out that someone ate too much. Even the chef in the cafeteria didn't have time to cook anymore. Master Lee turned around and saw the prettiest girl's mother standing with a few aunties in the courtyard with a disdainful smile on her face. Master Lee frowned subconsciously but didn't say anything. Lin Ziwen's mother spoke again. "Xiao Lu, why are you with such a person? She's a child of the Bai family." Master Lee thought that she didn't know Aju's identity. Mrs. Lin sneered. "How can an outsider from the countryside become a child of the Bai family? Xiao Lu, you're young and your mother isn't by your side all year round. Auntie Lin will teach you what kind of person you should hang out with. Hanging out with such an outsider will lower your status. We've never seen such a person in our cafeteria. Have you never eaten fried dough sticks in your life? Why are you buying half a bag of them?" At first, when Little Baldy heard what the other party said, she thought that she had bought all the food and caused the other party to not have breakfast. Then the more she listened, the more she felt that the other party's tone was not very good. Although little Baldy was young, she still had a sense of right and wrong. In addition, there were still many fried dough sticks at Uncle Lin's place. This female benefactor didn't buy them but instead complained that she bought too much. According to what Buddha said, this was not reasonable at all. However, the other party had no intention of stopping. Xiao Lu, it's obvious that this child has no manners. Which parent would let their child eat so much? Mrs. Lin glanced at little Baldy contemptuously. Unless it's those poor people from the countryside. I spent money to buy the fried dough sticks. It's my business how much I eat. What does it have to do with this female benefactor? Little Baldy was unhappy. She hated it when people said that she had no manners. Although her mother was not by her side, she would teach her a lot of things every time she wrote a letter. Her brothers would also send her a lot of things. She didn't steal or rob, so how could she have no manners? Her mother had told her that the things she bought within reason were hers. No one else had the right to talk nonsense. When Mrs. Lin heard that the little girl dared to talk back to her, she was instantly angry and laughed. Look, this child really has no manners at all. The adults are lecturing them. How can a child interrupt? You're obviously talking about me. Why can't I interrupt? Little Baldy narrowed his eyes and looked at her. I'm a person with a good upbringing. On the contrary, this benefactress, it's not up to you to criticize how much I eat when I buy something. Even if I'm from the countryside, I'm not eating your food. Mrs. Lin snorted. You're indeed not eating my family's food, you're eating the Bai family's food. How can a child be so shameless? Do you think it's natural to stay in the Bai family? I didn't stay in the Bai family. Little Baldy had already been agitated by her little brother wanting to sleep in separate beds with her last night. Now that she was being said like this, the child felt very uncomfortable. She clenched her little hands tightly. She really wanted to beat someone up. However, Master had told him to control his temper after leaving the mountain. When he wanted to beat someone up, he had to recite Bok 3 times in his mind. Even her little brother didn't like her fighting. You didn't stay in the Bai family? Alright kid, I don't have time to talk to you about this. Mrs. Lin was very indifferent. In the future, when you buy so many things in the cafeteria, do you think you're feeding pigs? Even pigs can't eat as much as you. The aunties chuckled softly. Little Baldy had never experienced such things. There was a bang. The door of the cafeteria was kicked fiercely. Bai Juan, who was wearing a coat, walked in from outside. His face no longer had the usual smile of a young master. It was said that Bai Juan was the calmest child in the compound. When he saw the elders, he could not find any mistakes at all. Even his usual actions were according to a template. But today, without saying anything, he went up and gave that adjutant a slap. Is there no one else in the Bai family? Look clearly who she is, and you still dare to make a move? Chapter 1135. Li Hailu was right. Other than Master Bai, there was no one else in the courtyard who had such an aura since they were young. The aide-de-camp was stunned. Normally he would fight back. Tyrant Li gritted his teeth. He must have used his connections to get in. How dare he return Master Bai's hand? Have you figured out your military rank? Unfortunately, Bai Juan did not compete with him in terms of military rank. He kicked him fiercely. He was like a young warlord who had yet to grow up. A loud bang was heard. The adjutant was kicked onto the dining table. Bai Juan was ruthless. He did not even want his coat. He turned around and looked at Mrs. Lin, but his words were directed at Li Hailu. Hailu, which fucking family does this adjutant belong to? The Lin family. You're definitely asking the obvious. Fight me. Bai Juan chuckled softly. Auntie Lin, you're here too. This adjutant of the Lin family is really well found. He dares to beat up anyone he sees, right? Uncle Zhang, call my grandpa and tell him that if my grandpa gives him the position that cousin Lin wants, he won't have a grandson like me. This little gangster Li interrupted and said, that's not necessary, right? Bai Juan ignored him and continued, by the way, tell my grandfather that in the future, I will fucking beat up the Lin family every time I see them. Their entire family will bully me because I don't have a father or mother. This time Adjutant Zhang was the one who hesitated. Young master, who would dare to bully you like this in the courtyard? The old chief doesn't like it when people mention this. You're obviously trying to infuriate the old chief. Juan, this is all a misunderstanding. How could Auntie bully you? Mrs. Lin wanted to explain, I'll change this adjutant later. Don't you think it's not good to alarm the old master over such a small matter? Bai Juan smiled again. Auntie Lin, when you were about to kick him out just now, why didn't you say that this was a small matter? If someone treated Lin Ziwen the same way today, you definitely wouldn't say it was a small matter. Little Juan, you brought back a child from the mountains. Auntie saw that she was really uneducated and didn't have any control when she ate, so I just wanted to control her. Is this worth getting angry over? Bai Juan's eyes darkened. I call you auntie because of Uncle Lin. Do you really think that you're my auntie? A mistress dares to say that others have no manners? These words were the eternal pain in Madame Lin's heart, but because of the Lin family's power, no one dared to mention it. In fact, Ms. Lin had indeed been promoted later on. The previous wife of the Lin family was the one who was magnanimous. However, she had thought things through and decided not to go abroad with this marriage in mind. When Mrs. Lin heard this, her face turned red and white. Juan, you're almost done. Bai Juan's expression was cold. Uncle Zhang, go and call Grandpa immediately. Yes. Deputy Zhang, you finally understand. If you didn't make this call today, young master would have directly destroyed the canteen. Mrs. Lin hurriedly reached out and pulled Adjutant Zhang. Just because of a little country bumpkin, the relationship between the two families is ruined. Little Juan is a child. How can Adjutant Zhang not understand? Vice Commander Zhang's mouth opened wide. No wonder young master was so angry. This woman really had a bad mouth. When Mrs. Lin saw that she had stabilized Vice Commander Zhang, she turned around and continued to say to Bai Juan, Little Juan, look at Auntie Lin's body. It's all because of this little country bumpkin. Auntie Lin didn't say anything to you, right? Let's forget about this matter. Let's not alarm the old man. Don't alarm my grandfather? Sure. Bai Juan walked in front of Vice Commander Zhang and took the pistol hanging on his belt with a snap. He pointed it directly at Mrs. Lin's head. I'll shoot you and we'll forget about this matter. His ferocious look gave Vice Commander Zhang a shock. Young master. Go to the side. Bai Juan's eyes were only on Mrs. Lin. Tell me I'll shoot you, okay? Mrs. Lin had never seen such a scene before. Her legs were weak and her entire body was stiff. She didn't even dare to move. How could a child take out a gun just like that? This was not something a child would do at all. Master Li watched from the side without blinking. He sniffed the snot that was about to come out. He thought to himself, fuck, his brother was really cool. Since I can't forget about this matter even if I shoot you, why can't you just bully my child? Bai Juan asked Mrs. Lin. No one dared to go up and stop him. Mrs. Lin's voice was trembling. Little Juan, didn't Auntie already admit her mistake? Put the gun back. Be careful not to misfire. This is Auntie's fault this time. Bai Juan sneered and returned the gun to Vice Commander Zhang. Go and make the call now. Don't let me really shoot. Vice Commander Zhang felt that he should indeed make the call. Young master was really angry this time. How could he not be angry? Bai Juan had never thought that he would see such a miserable little baldy. When he woke up, Auntie Wang even said that a Jew had gone out to buy breakfast for him. The child was reluctant to wake him up and did not bring any money with her. Bai Juan was already worried. Before he could put on his clothes, he heard little tyrant panting and telling him how a Jew was bullied. As soon as he arrived at the canteen, he saw that his child was covered in residue. The small sportswear she wore when she went out was dirty and she was even dragged away. However, young Master Bai could no longer remember that little Baldy actually knew martial arts. He just felt that his child had to be pointed at and scolded when she came out to buy breakfast. It was also because she had lived in the Bai family for 2 days. What the fuck was this world? Bai Juan's eyes were red with anger. He walked toward little Baldy and wiped the child's face with a tissue. Little brother, I didn't hit anyone. This was the first sentence the child said when she saw him. The second sentence was, I bought you 10 of your favorite tea eggs and put them on the table. I thought that if you didn't come I would spar with them. Actually, it was just a change of adjectives. The meaning of the little guy's attempt to cover up was particularly obvious. Bai Juan found it funny and distressing when he heard this. If you want to spar in the future, spar. Don't worry so much. Little Baldy tilted her big head cutely. Little brother had clearly told her not to always beat people up. Why did he change his mind now? Bai Juan looked at the redness on the back of the child's hand and knew that it was burned by something. His heart was burning. He asked Li Hailu, who was beside him, "What's going on?" Auntie Lin spread it with a wave of her hand. Li Hailu glanced at Mrs. Lin, who was already scared out of her wits. This woman is really the most disgusting woman I've ever seen. She was clearly the one who did it. He just said that a Jew did it. How shameless. Chapter 1136. Li Hailu's voice was loud to begin with, but after he shouted like this, the people who came to buy food all knew what was going on. They turned around and looked at Bai Juan, who was protecting little Baldy. No wonder the kid from the Bai family was so angry. Mrs. Lin had really gone too far this time. Bullying a child was at the very least a personality problem. Xiao Feng followed his mother to buy breakfast. When he saw that his brothers were all there and when he heard Li Hailu's shout, he gave up his usual image as a noble young master. He ran over and asked Bai Juan, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Bai Juan looked at Mrs. Lin. "It's the Lin family who are in trouble." Xiao Feng had been with Bai Juan since he was young. In the military compound, the reason why people did not dare to provoke these two families was because they were very close. Compared to Li Hailu, Xiao Feng's voice was not that loud, but it made Mrs. Lin even more afraid. "Someone is bullying Bai Juan. Come and take a look." Mrs. Xiao walked over. She was wearing a pure white business suit. She didn't look like someone who had given birth to a child at all. Her temperament was particularly good. She worked in education and came from a scholarly family. From the beginning she didn't like Mrs. Lin. If it weren't for the old chief, she wouldn't even greet Mrs. Lin when she saw her. Now that she heard her son say that Bai Juan had been bullied, when her eyes swept over Mrs. Lin, they became more and more emotionless. "What's going on?" Mrs. Lin wanted to explain, but she was stopped by Mrs. Xiao's words. "I'm asking Xiao Juan, not you." "Auntie Xiao, I'll settle this matter." Bai Juan didn't even say anything because he felt that there was no need to say anything about what had happened. When Mrs. Xiao heard this, she knew that even she couldn't interfere. This child. "Hailu, go and tell Master Li to fry as many fried dough sticks as he can." Bai Juan's voice was indifferent. "Our child can eat so much. I can buy as much for her as she eats. We're just buying things. Do we have to be discriminated against just because we buy more? How can the food be scattered by someone?" As he spoke, Bai Juan looked in Mrs. Lin's direction. "You better not go out these few days. I can't guarantee that I won't splash you with hot soy milk when you go out. Or you will think that I treat an elder like this, right? That's even easier. Hailu, Xiaofeng, in the future, no matter whether the Lin family is male or female, including Lin Ziwen, beat them up every time you see them." Bai Juan. Mrs. Lin couldn't find a way out of this embarrassing situation, but what she was most worried about was what would happen next. "Auntie made a mistake. You should come at Auntie. Why did you let them hit one?" Bai Juan looked at her expressionlessly. "Because I am a child with no upbringing. I will do whatever I like. If you can bully my child, why can't I make an example of your child? Your child is a treasure, but mine isn't? You're just bullying our Lin clan because we're not as powerful as your Bai clan, right?" Mrs. Lin was also confused with anger. Her mouth was trembling. "Why don't you see how much our Lin family has helped your Bai family get to where they are today?" When Bai Juan heard this, he smiled. "So it's all because of the Lin family's help that our Bai family has today. You should say this to my grandfather. It's best if you call Grandpa Lin and Uncle Lin over and ask them why your Lin family helped our Bai family. You're really used to being left alone. I don't want to talk to you." Mrs. Lin turned her face away, thinking that since old Chief Bai had already been alerted, she could just fight to the end. Their Lin family had taken a bullet for the Bai family. Xiao Lin's mother, who was at the side, originally wanted to persuade Bai Juan not to show off so much at such a young age. Now that she heard Mrs. Lin's words, she could not help but shake her head. The Lin family had really courted death by marrying such a daughter-in-law into the family. The other two daughters-in-law, who were often with Mrs. Lin and had just entered the family, did not know the twists and turns of this matter. They only felt that Bai Juan was unreasonable. That's enough. Sister Lin just said one more sentence. Shouldn't the elders teach the younger generation to listen? Chief Lin has taken a bullet for others before, right? Isn't that so? Now someone is trying to be ungrateful, hee hee. Not to mention Xiao Lin's mother. Even little Gangster Li felt that these women were a little retarded. No wonder his father had taught him since he was young that he had to marry a virtuous wife and not just for looks. Little Gangster Li had been conflicted in the past. He liked good-looking girls so much, but his father had denied his only criteria for choosing a girlfriend. Wasn't this forcing him to turn gay? He now understood that in the future he really had to look at not just the face but also the brain. Otherwise he would not even know when he would die. Bai Jun was even more direct. He first carried little Baldy up, then said to Vice Commander Zhang, "Remember all their names. Hey, you really scared us to death. Isn't he just a child? Can he really be the head of the Bai family? Even if old Chief Bai comes, he has to care about his face. This child really needs to be disciplined. He's getting more and more lawless." Xiao Lin listened to this series of attacks and raised his head again. He looked at the tall and straight figure not far away. Without thinking, he walked over and said to Mother Xiao, "Mom, tell Dad and Grandpa that if Bai Jun wants to fight, I'll fight with him. I'll fight with him too." Little Gangster Li also ran over. There was a layer of sweat on his forehead. Those who don't like Bai Jun are going against the Li family. Bai Jun stood in the middle of the two people. He was like a pine tree with delicate features. He was even holding the soft little Baldy in his hand. Mother Xiao looked at this scene and seemed to see the future of the military compound. These children seemed to be even more united than the previous generation. Outsiders always said that the reason why the Chinese were sometimes cowardly was because before others could attack, their own family had already destroyed their own people. But now Mrs. Xiao felt a kind of pure brotherly spirit from these juniors. Although they still looked a little immature and arrogant. But it was better than their brothers being submissive when they were in trouble. Children raised by soldiers should be so brave. The two who spoke did not think much of it. Mrs. Lin still knew some things. When she heard that the Bai, Li and Xiao families were going to join forces, her face turned pale in an instant. No matter how she thought about it, she could not understand. She just wanted to teach a little Baldy a lesson. How did it end up like this? After Mrs. Lin returned home, she was nervous for a long time. Seeing that there was nothing strange at home, she smiled again. She knew it. It was just a few children. What kind of trouble could they cause? Unfortunately, she had underestimated Master Bai's planning ability. Chapter 1137. You won't be of any use if you go home like this. Bai Jun hugged little Baldy and applied medicine to the child. His eyes revealed a depth that did not match his age. Xiao Lin was smart to begin with. You mean we need to use some tricks? Yes. Bai Jun's voice was very calm. I'll take care of the Lin family. Hailu, go home first and bring some steamed buns that Auntie Wang made. Don't go out even if Uncle Li knocks on the door. Insist on not eating in the afternoon. Just say that you have no appetite because you were angered by the Zhang family. Then tell Uncle Li that the Zhang family has been in contact with the Sun family in the south recently and wants to abolish some veteran subsidies. Fuck. How do you know such a thing? Master Li was simply impressed. He could only hear these words from his father and the others. How did Master Bai know? However, his father hated it when people were harsh on veterans. Bai Jun lowered his eyes and blew on little Baldy's hand. Seeing the child shrink back, his hand also tightened. This matter won't be over just like that. Xiao Lin understood Bai Jun's meaning and did not continue to speak. He brought Master Li out of the door. Since noon that day, the Xiao and Li families had been anxious. Especially the two grandmas. What's going on? Why isn't he eating anything? Master Li's grandmother once had a military rank on her shoulder. Usually her grandson ate as if he was fighting a war. Why was he so listless today? Grandma Li's first reaction was to ask Master Li's father, "Tell me, did you hit Hai Lu again?" "How would I dare to hit your precious grandson?" Master Li's father was also puzzled. What's going on with this kid today? What is he doing? Grandma Li slapped the back of her son's head. How can you talk about your son like that? Why don't you go up and ask? Master Li's father thought that he had to ask. If he did not ask clearly, the Li family would not be able to have peace. When there was a knock on the door, Master Li was eating meat buns in the sea. When he heard his father's voice, he choked so much that he drank 3 mouthfuls of mineral water before he patted his chest with all his might. Phew, I almost choked to death. While muttering, Li Hailu quickly packed the rest of the buns in a plastic bag and stuffed them into the drawer. He even fanned himself with a fan. After the smell was gone, he opened the door from the inside. As soon as Li Boang's father came in, he saw his son leaning against the wall and imitating Lin Daiyu. It seemed that there was something wrong with his son. You don't have a fever? Li Hailu's father looked Li Hailu up and down. Why is your face so red? That was because he choked on water. Afraid that he would be discovered, Li Hailu immediately changed the topic. First he talked about what had happened this morning from beginning to end. Then he talked about the harsh veteran. Li Hailu's father immediately slammed the table and stood up. Come follow me back to the army. Master Li knew that Bai Juan's method was effective, so he finally didn't have to pretend anymore. He went downstairs and began to wolf down the food. Grandma Li was a sensible person. She knocked on the table and asked him, "You tell Grandma the truth. Did that brat from the Bai family tell you to do this today?" Yes. When Grandma Li saw that her grandson admitted it so readily, she was stunned at first. Then she heard Li Hailu say, "When I came, Bai Juan said that if Grandma asks, I should tell the truth. He said that you feel sorry for the children." This little fox. Grandma Li smiled. "Aren't you afraid that you will be betrayed when the time comes?" When Li Hailu said this, he had to talk to Grandma properly. "Grandma, first of all, I don't think Bai Juan did anything wrong. He can't be compared to me. I have a father and a mother. You and Grandpa often accompany me. He only has Grandpa Bai left. Grandpa Bai still stays in the army all year round and doesn't come back. Now that he finally has a younger sister who helped him go out to buy breakfast, she was pointed at the nose and called a country bumpkin. Who could tolerate this? I can't control the situation like Bai Juan, but what I admire the most is his ability to protect his own people. Also, although Bai Juan is a little fox, he won't betray me. Grandma, do you still remember that one winter when we went to play, the river froze? I was playful and fell into the ice hole. If Bai Juan hadn't grabbed me and didn't let go, I would have lost my life. At that time, everyone else had run away, leaving only him and Shaolin. We were young at that time, not even 4 years old. Shaolin was scared silly at that time. He kept pointing at me and crying. Only Bai Juan didn't let go even when the ice was about to crack. Grandma, you also know that I don't have many things in my heart. I think this is quite good. Let Bai Juan worry about those things. I will fight wherever he tells me to fight. With him standing behind me and commanding me, I am relieved. He is also good to our Li family. He never thinks that we are barbaric, unlike some people who show that they respect our military achievements, but in fact they always laugh at my wild personality. Bai Juan said that it would be good if a person like me entered the army. I will also be a general in the future. Me, Shaolin, and Bai Juan, the 3 of us will always be the Iron Triangle. This sentence is never said casually. After little gangster Li finished speaking, he began to eat the white rice in his bowl in big mouthfuls. Grandma Li, on the other hand, was unable to come back to her senses for a long time because of these words. Thinking about it carefully, wasn't this what they wanted? After 100 years, her grandson would be able to protect the country, and someone would be able to protect her grandson. They were also relieved that these 3 children could be so well. Although the situation on Shaolin's side was different, the result was the same. The 2 women who said that Bai Juan didn't know what was going on, but their husbands were already being interviewed. In the afternoon, old Master Bai rushed back from outside the city. His expression was very bad. Bai Juan, who allowed you to pull out your gun? Kneel down first. Bai Juan was still holding little Baldy in his hand. He raised his eyes to look at old Master Bai. Grandfather, go and call the Lin family over first. I'll kneel again. You're going to anger me to death. Old Master Bai put on his military cap. Little Baldy was originally asleep, but she instantly opened her eyes. Knowing that the situation was not right, she immediately rolled down from the sofa. Grandfather Bai, I'll kneel for little brother. When old Master Bai saw the child, the anger in his heart subsided. Why are you kneeling? Let your brother kneel. Little brother pulled out his gun for me. Little Baldy's little palm was scalded. When she fell asleep, Bai Juan had just wrapped a white bandage around her. Now she was like a little panda. I shouldn't have stayed in the Bai family for free. This way, others won't say anything about me and little brother won't get angry. If little brother doesn't get angry, Grandpa Bai won't get angry. A Jew has already decided. When little brother falls asleep in a while, I will go and find those people to settle the score. I will directly beat them up. In the future, I will settle my own matters on my own and not implicate little brother. I just don't know why, but in the end the person who was coaxed became meek. Speaking of this, little Baldy frowned in distress and said seriously, in the future, I must get rid of the habit of taking an afternoon nap. It's too much of a delay in business. Vice Commander Zhang. Your so-called business is to coax the young master and then beat people up. Chapter 1138. When old Master Bai heard little Baldy's words, he immediately frowned. A Jew? Tell Grandpa who said that our little Jew was a freeloader? An ant. Little Baldy used her little claws to tug at the corner of old Master Bai's clothes. She even said that I was a little brother. At that time I really wanted to beat her up. In the past, senior brother always said that the women at the foot of the mountain were tigers. Only now do I know what a tiger looks like. I don't think I'm wrong, but Grandpa Bai said that if you want us to kneel, we will kneel. Wali Buddha said that this is called filial piety. Old Master Bai was stunned for a moment, then he smiled and reached out to touch little Baldy's big head. Our little Jew is more sensible than some adults. As he said that, old Master Bai looked at Bai Juan. You are older than a Jew. As an older brother, there is nothing wrong with you protecting her. But Bai Juan, remember, don't let anyone in the family see you pull out the gun. The gun in your hand is to protect your family. Even if one day you want to use it, you have to do it where she can't see you. Understand? Yes, Grandpa. Bai Juan said as he bent his legs. This time I was too impulsive. I will handle it better in the future. A Jew is still young. Bai Juan brought her back. I can promise Grandpa that I will follow Grandpa's instructions in the future. But I will definitely take revenge for a Jew's grievances. Old Master Bai walked over, his military uniform straight. Of course we have to take revenge. It's wrong for us to pull out the gun, but I won't do it if someone says that about my grandson. Chief. Auntie Wang saw that the atmosphere was better, so she dared to speak. She whispered in Old Master Bai's ear, Little Jew is a girl. Old Master Bai was stunned. What did you say? Little Jew is a girl. Auntie Wang repeated. Old Master Bai immediately turned his head to look at little Baldy, who was kneeling with Bai Juan. The child was still looking at him with her big round eyes. Even her head tilted to the left as if she was saying, What's wrong? She thinks she is a boy. Auntie Wang continued to whisper to Old Master Bai. After taking a deep breath, Old Master Bai immediately picked up the child. Little Jew, be good. Let your brother kneel. He has rough skin and thick flesh. It's fine for him to kneel for a while. My skin is rough and my flesh is thick too. In order to show off his figure, little Baldy even lifted up his small arms. They were round and cute. The Bai family had only one heir for generations and most of them were sons. When Bai Juan's parents were still alive, Old Master Bai wanted them to quickly give birth to a caring little granddaughter, but the world was unpredictable. Now that his granddaughter had finally come, she was so obedient. The main reason was that she was more sincere than anyone else. How could Old Master Bai not like it? He couldn't wait to get the Lin family to come over and ask them face to face what was going on. Vice Commander Zhang, get everyone over here. Yes. When she received the news, Mrs. Lin was still playing cards in her room. That little bit of uneasiness in the morning had long disappeared for her. It was impossible for the Bai family to break off their relationship with the Lin family for a child from the countryside. Deputy Zhang did not invite Mrs. Lin first, but Mrs. Lin's husband Lin Feng, who had once worked under Old Master Bai. Lin Feng had just returned from the army, so he did not know what had happened. When he entered the Bai family, he saw Bai Juan kneeling on the ground. He was immediately shocked. What's going on? One had to know that Old Master Bai doted on little Juan the most. Not to mention kneeling, he had never even beaten or scolded him. In addition, when people saw Bai Juan in all aspects, they would give him a thumbs up. Why did he suddenly make him kneel in the hall? Old Master Bai did not play any tricks with Lin Feng. Bai Juan, tell your Uncle Lin what's going on. Bai Juan straightened his back and his voice was indifferent. The Lin family scolded a Jew for being a country bumpkin from the village. They mocked her for being able to eat and said that she was a pig. They even spilled the soy milk she bought on her body. They even said that it was a Jew who was rude. Uncle Lin, since you're here today, let me ask you a question. Did our Bai family rely on your Lin family to get to where we are today? Your wife said that the Lin family is indebted to the Bai family. If it weren't for the Lin family, there would be no Bai family. If it weren't for Grandpa Lin taking the bullet for my grandfather, our Bai family would have been finished long ago. As soon as Lin Feng heard the first sentence, he subconsciously looked at his old chief. When he finished listening to everything, his heart thumped heavily. Old Master Bai also did not expect things to be like this. The expression on his face also turned cold. Lin Feng, since your wife brought this up, then let's have a good talk. Go. Bring Madame Lin here. When Lin Feng heard Old Master Bai use the word invite, he knelt on the ground with a thud. Deputy Zhang was waiting for Old Master Bai's words. In less than 5 minutes he brought him to the Bai family. Lin Feng tried his best to explain to Old Master Bai. After all, if not for the help of the Bai family, just based on the Lin family's background, they would be nothing. Grandpa Lin was Old Master Bai's adjutant a long time ago. At that time the Lin family was so poor that they had nothing. Old Master Bai valued Grandpa Lin's honesty and mentioned him again and again. It was indeed true that Grandpa Lin took the bullet for Old Master Bai. However, the adjutant was supposed to take the bullet for the chief. This was his duty. If it weren't for Old Master Bai, Grandpa Lin wouldn't have been able to stay in the army, let alone have a meteoric rise in the future. Outsiders didn't know about these things, but the older generation knew about them. However, these old leaders only told their descendants. Therefore, Mrs. Lin didn't know that she had just heard a little bit of news and then made up a version with her own imagination. She thought that the Lin and Bai families were so close because Grandpa Lin had saved Grandpa Bai's life. In fact, it was the complete opposite. For so many years, the Lin family had to rely on the Bai family for everything. Mrs. Lin was also a smart person. When she heard that Old Master Bai was looking for her, she began to cry before she even entered the door. The content of her cry was roughly, the two families have been in a relationship for so many years. Even if Bai Juan is looking for my old master, he shouldn't treat me like this. When Lin Feng heard this from inside, he wished that he could immediately rush to the door and shut this woman's mouth. When Mrs. Lin came in and saw that Lin Feng was also kneeling there, she thought that she was doing him a favor. Old Chief, how did our Lin family let down your Bai family? I admit that my words today were a little too much, but after all, my old master is still here. You can't just forget about your old friends, right? After Old Master Bai heard these words, he smiled coldly. I finally know why my grandson pulled out a gun. Lin Feng, you really married a good wife. Chapter 1139. Lin Feng's sweat dripped onto the ground along with Old Master Bai's words. Mrs. Lin still wanted to say something. Lin Feng didn't care about kneeling or not. He stood up and slapped her face. Shut up. Mrs. Lin was stunned by this slap. She reached out to cover her face. Looking at her husband's furious expression, even her lips were trembling. Lin Feng pulled her over and knelt beside Old Master Bai. Old Chief, the entire courtyard knows that the reason why the Lin family is where it is today is all because of the old chief. The Bai family's great kindness to the Lin family will not dare to forget. Young master, you're right. No matter what our Lin family's identity is now, we're still part of the Bai family. My father is the adjutant of the old chief and this will never change. This time the Lin family has let the old chief down. Mrs. Lin was not stupid. After hearing Lin Feng's words, she instantly realized that she had reversed the situation. The Bai family had never taken advantage of the Lin family. On the contrary, without the Bai family, there would not be the Lin family today. Mrs. Lin panicked. Half of her face was swollen. She looked at Old Master Bai guiltily. The Bai family had always had a kind of upright and plain-spoken righteousness. Now this kind of righteousness was displayed even more vividly under his rage. Mrs. Lin was so scared that her face turned pale. She hurriedly explained, "Old chief, this is all a misunderstanding. You said that a Jew is a country bumpkin is also a misunderstanding?" Bai Juan's cold voice interrupted her. His hand was still holding little Baldy's head. "You overthrowing her soy milk is also a misunderstanding? Why are there so many misunderstandings in this world?" The more Lin Feng listened, the more miserable his expression became. Many times before, his father had told him to discipline his wife. However, he only felt that his wife usually treated people well. Although she liked to compare, which family didn't like to compare nowadays? Wasn't this a small problem? But now he realized that this wife of his not only liked to compare, but she also liked to insult people and trample on people. She didn't even let go of children. The key was that this child was brought back by the Bai family. Why didn't she use her brain to think about it carefully? What was the Bai family's status? Since they had already decided to bring the child back and Bai Juan had personally agreed to it, then would the child not be protected by the Bai family? In order to let everyone in the courtyard know about little Aju's existence, Bai Juan brought her to meet all the old chiefs in the military compound on the first day. What was the purpose of this? Was it purely to greet the old senior officers with a smile? This was clearly telling the entire hospital that although little Aju was adopted, she was no different from a member of the Bai family. But his wife had actually made such a big mistake. Lin Feng really didn't know what to do. Mrs. Lin was still not convinced because in her heart, the little Baldy was just a little bastard from the countryside who didn't know who his parents were. However, she understood the current situation very well. If she did not admit her mistake, the old man would not let her go. Therefore, Mrs. Lin had been speaking anxiously. The content was probably to apologize to Bai Juan. Bai Juan glanced at her, his gaze indifferent. "You should say sorry to Aju, not to me." Mrs. Lin gritted her teeth and looked at little Baldy. "Aju, it's Auntie's fault this time. Look, if you had told Auntie earlier that your appetite was so big, there wouldn't be such a misunderstanding now. In fact, it's not a big deal for a child to eat a little more. Moreover, Auntie didn't have any ill intentions towards you at that time. It's just that Auntie's method was wrong and her attitude was a little too much, which made you feel uncomfortable. Look at now, because of the two of us, the Bai family and the Lin family have become estranged. This is not good. The old chief is old. Do you want Grandpa Bai to continue to be angry? Little Aju is so kind and a monk. She definitely doesn't want to make things difficult for the adults. She will definitely forgive Auntie, right?" Little Baldy felt that this sentence sounded awkward no matter how she listened to it. She really didn't want the Bai family to have any bad effects because of her. Therefore, little Baldy said it straightforwardly. "I won't make things difficult for Grandpa Bai. Buddha Wooly said that you should always be grateful to those who treat you well." Hearing the first half of this sentence, the corners of Mrs. Lin's mouth curled up. In the end, she was just a person who came down from the mountains. She just had a soft personality and didn't dare to cause any trouble. As long as she was criticized like this, she would definitely give in. However, the second half of little Baldy's sentence made Mrs. Lin's entire face turn green. She said, "Kesu, I don't want to forgive you. You didn't even apologize to me. Buddha Wooly taught everyone that an apology has to be sincere. You're not sincere, but you're still in the Bai family now. It's not convenient for me to beat you up. When you leave the Bai family's courtyard, I'll make a move. Although my mother said that I have to be gentle with girls, after all, I'm going to be an abbot in the future, so I have to be gentlemanly. But I don't want to be gentle with you. I just want to beat you up." Little Baldy said it too straightforwardly. On the contrary, it made people feel that her entire little face was so cute that it could melt people's hearts. The main thing was that her actions were funny. If Bai Juan didn't get up, she would kneel with Bai Juan. How could Bai Juan bear to let a child kneel? Helpless, the dignified young master Bai would never have thought that he, who was invincible in the military compound, would not be able to pull up a 4-year-old child. Little Aju's arm was held by Bai Juan the entire time. The small claws of her other arm were pressed on the ground. She was kneeling on her 2 small knees with the kitten on her head. Her small body leaned forward as she spoke to Mrs. Lin in a serious manner. Every sentence made Madame Lin unable to use any of her tricks. Old Master Bai directly said, "Lin Feng, you heard it too. What Aju said is what I want to say. The Bai family will not accept such an accusatory apology. You guys can go out." From today onwards, if anything happens to the Lin family in the future, don't come looking for me again. Go back and tell your father that I'm grateful to him for taking the bullet for me back then. But this doesn't mean that his daughter-in-law can bully the Bai family as she pleases. As soon as this sentence was said, Lin Feng felt that he had lost his composure. He knew that if he walked out of this door, the Lin family would be finished. It was not just wealth, but also the lifeline of the entire Lin family. Especially his father, who had been upright all his life, only had respect for the old chief. He still did not know about this matter when he was outside. Once he found out, the Lin family would be turned upside down. Even if the Bai family was put aside, the Lin family's ungrateful reputation in the military compound would spread. When that time came, what would the Lin family do? The more Lin Feng thought about it, the more anxious he became. However, Bai Juan did not have the chance to explain to him. He directly asked Vice Commander Zhang to chase them out. Ever since Mrs. Lin married into the Lin family, she had never made such a fool of herself. Everyone in the compound was looking at her. Mrs. Lin was extremely angry. She said to Lin Feng, even if the Bai family is indebted to the Lin family, the current Lin family is not weak. Do they really think that they are the only one? She pulled the soldier beside her over and said, "What are you doing? Who can break in here just because they want to?" The soldier didn't say anything. His face was pale as he looked in that direction. Madame Lin followed his gaze and saw the 4 sports cars behind the motorcycle. Each of them had an aura that was difficult to ignore. The front lights were turned on and they were all armed equipment. How did they break in here? Where were the guards? Where were the guards in the courtyard? Madame Lin was furious. Go and call them immediately. Tell them that someone has broken in. Tell them to send as many people as they can. Yes. The soldier received the order and was about to run out. However, before he could run 2 meters, he was stopped by a man who looked like a bear. That man was very tall, about 1.9 meters tall. He was bald and had long legs. His hands were very strong. With just a pull, he pressed him onto the hood of the car. Then another handsome youth opened the car door beside him. Lin Feng was actually brought out by someone from inside. When Madame Lin saw her husband in the other party's hands, her eyes trembled. What was going on? What was going on? With a bang, the front of the tomahawk was turned. The figure on top of it took a step forward and slowly walked towards Madame Lin. The mottled light faded away, gradually revealing a clear face. Who else could it be but Hellion Vivian? Hellion Qingchen, who had already grown up, followed behind her, holding an assault rifle in his hand. If he didn't move, his entire body would be surrounded by an elegant aura. I heard that you dislike my sister very much? The boy spoke. There was an indescribable coldness in his voice. Madame Lin was sure that she had never seen this woman and boy before, so how could she dislike their sister? Did you recognize the wrong person? After all, Lin Feng was in the other party's hands, so Madame Lin's attitude was naturally very soft. Hellion Vivian looked at the flattery on her face and smiled. My mother's surname is Bailey and her name is Jiao. Oh, perhaps you still don't know enough. My mother grew up in the mountains and is a monk. She's a little bald. She's very strong and eats a lot. Her Buddhist name is Xianaju. There was a loud boom. Madame Lin felt all the blood in her body rush to the top of her head. A monk, a little bald head, very strong, eats a lot. There was no need to confirm. It was indeed that little country bumpkin. How could this be? How could she? Before Madame Lin could figure it out, Hellion Vivian was about to speak. This time she didn't smile, and her eyes emitted a coldness that was difficult to ignore. Since you think that Maya Ju is a bastard child without parents, then I'll let you see how I will deal with the person who bullies my daughter, Qingchen. Madame Lin accepted a bribe of 10,000 yuan. The money is a little. After all, she's just a military family member and doesn't have a clear military rank. Hellion Qingchen held the notebook in her hand. However, it doesn't matter. Our family has a professional team of lawyers. We will work hard to drag the entire Lin family down. Who asked Maya Ju to be a bastard child? When Madame Lin heard this last sentence, she couldn't hold on any longer. Her vision darkened and she almost fainted. The only thought in her mind was, this time she was really done for. Chapter 1141. 10,000 yuan was simply a drop in the bucket for the Lin family. But now that Lin Feng was being transferred, if such a thing was exposed, it was very likely that he would be punished. If that was the case, she would not have a good ending. But then again, the matter of 10,000 yuan could be considered a big deal, but it could also be considered a small matter. The Lin family had a foundation for so many years, and people from various departments knew each other. Those people would always give face to the old man. Even if they did not give face to the old man, they still had to be wary of the Tang family. Old Chief Bai said that he was going to fall out with them, but at most, it would only be directed at her personally and would not involve the Lin family. Because something happened to the Lin family, the Bai family would definitely not feel good. The Bai family and the Tang family were cousins. With such a close relationship, the other party could not do anything to her. The more Mrs. Lin thought about it, the calmer she became. She raised her eyes to look at Hellion Vivian. I don't know what you're talking about. I only know one thing. This is the military compound. If you barge in without any procedures, you will have to bear legal responsibility. Who said I didn't have any procedures? Hellion Wei chuckled as she tilted her head and fiddled with the gun in her hand. Then she lifted her chin and pointed at Lin Feng. Tell this madam of yours who tramples on the weak whether it is legal for me to enter the military compound. Yes. Lin Feng's forehead was covered in sweat, and his tone was not as imposing as before. From the moment he saw the medal on Hellion Vivian's shoulder, he knew that they had kicked an iron plate this time. The Tang sect's 18 shadows. Each of them had made military contributions. While they protected the country, they also had many privileges. One of them included that as long as they showed the medal, they could enter and leave the compound. Moreover, the other party's identity was not that simple. Other than the Tang sect's shadow, she was also the internationally renowned arms queen Hellion Vivian. Even if these were not mentioned, the power of the financial group behind her was not to be underestimated. The Juwei group was a company that even they did not want to provoke. This person was actually a Jew's mother. Why had he never heard Chief Bai mention it before? It seemed that even Bai Jun did not know about this matter. Lin Feng's entire being was in chaos. He was really scared. How could he marry such a reckless woman? When Mrs. Lin saw that Lin Feng's situation was different, she couldn't help but lose some of her arrogance. However, she wouldn't change her attitude. Even if it's legal, I can still sue you for breaking into my Lin family's house with a bicycle. Sue me. Hellion Vivian laughed. He turned around with a bang. The black muzzle was aimed at Mrs. Lin. Before Mrs. Lin could react, there was a loud bang. The bullet pierced through her forearm. Blood gushed out in an instant. A few madams around them screamed out loud. The other 4 adjutants wanted to come forward, but they were all pushed back by young El's arm. Madame Lin was in so much pain that she immediately collapsed to the ground. Cold sweat and tears poured out together. Hellion Vivian walked towards her. If you want to sue me, you have to have a reason. It's just that trespassing into the Lin family is too small a matter. I'll give you this reason now. Let's see if your Lin family will sue me. Bai Jun didn't shoot because he left a way out for the Lin family and the Bai family in his heart. With me, the Lin family has no way out. Old Master Lin's lifelong loyalty has been ruined by a gold digger like you. It's really unpleasant to see. Adjutant Lin, it's time for you to change your taste in women. You. Mrs. Lin was angry and in pain. She wanted nothing more than to pounce on Hellion Vivian and bite her to death, but she was afraid of the gun in her hand. This matter will definitely not end just like that. I will sue you. I will definitely sue you. Hellion Vivian looked at her with a smile. She squatted down and gently patted her face with the handle of the gun. I fired this shot on behalf of my daughter. You are welcome to sue me at any time. As she spoke, Hellion Wei stood up with her long and slender legs and set her gaze on Lin Feng again. I'll get someone to keep an eye on the Lin family. If this woman is still around after 3 days, I won't care about the old master's face anymore. You know very well what the consequences will be. Lin Feng lowered his head. Yes. All right, we still need Adjutant Lin to send us out. As she spoke, Hellion Vivian turned around and looked at Mrs. Lin, who was in so much pain. After all, the courtyard is not a place where commoners like us can casually barge into. Mrs. Lin screamed desperately as she was carried onto the bed. She just couldn't swallow this anger. The entire Lin family was emitting an unsettling smell of blood. The few ladies who were playing cards were also frightened by this matter. Lin Feng didn't have the time to care about the things behind him. He followed beside Hellion Vivian. Hellion Qingchen, who was already 9 years old, didn't want to leave at all. Like a little prince, he stood at a place not far from the Bai family. He stopped in his tracks, his jet-black eyes only looking in one direction. Hellion Vivian knew what her son was thinking. She also wanted to see her daughter. However, now was not the right time. Don't tell the Bai family about our identities for the time being, and don't tell anyone. Hellion Vivian said to Lin Feng in a low voice. I won't make things difficult for the Lin family. However, Adjutant Lin, you know better than anyone how many people's futures are ruined by women. It's up to you whether you still want this daughter-in-law or not. But there is one thing I want to tell you. This time my little Aju didn't lose anything. If there is a next time, don't blame me for not remembering our old relationship. There won't be a next time. Lin Feng stood up straight. He finally understood what his father meant when he told him back then. To marry a wife, one had to be virtuous. This sentence was not without its original meaning. This wife of his really didn't know where she was wrong at all. After Hellion Vivian got the answer she wanted, she turned to look at the little prince behind her. Qingchen has left. They are still waiting. I promised my brother that I would take a photo of little Aju for him to see. Hellion Qingchen just stood there. Her pretty little face was really very handsome, but the corners of her eyes were a little lonely. He had even prepared a big bag of cash for his sister. He was going to give it to her. Could it be that she was really going to leave without even seeing him? Faintly, a layer of spiritual energy lingered around Hellion Qingchen's body. Usually at this time little Baldy would sit on the big bed in Baijun's room and roll around, chanting Buddhist scriptures and meditating. But today she seemed to have sensed something. She suddenly sat up straight and did not greet Baijun. She just ran out with her little turtle claws wrapped in a white cloth. Baijun was still washing the child's kasaya, so he did not react so quickly. Everyone knew that when little Baldy ran, she was no different from a flaming wheel. In the blink of an eye, she was gone. However, after running out, she did not know where to turn. The white cat on top of her head seemed to know what her little master was thinking and meowed towards the east. Old Master Lin had been in the military all his life. When he came out of the villa, he could not help but feel a lingering fear. However, compared to the lingering fear, he simply wished that he could immediately chase Mrs. Lin out of the Lin family. Mrs. Lin was still lying on the bed and making a fuss. When she saw that old Master Lin had returned, the fuss became even more intense. She shouted that she must find the person who fired the gun and let the other party be sued. Old Master Lin was so angry that he laughed. His face was gloomy. Do you know who the other party is? You want the other party to be sued. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.